Chapter 688. After successfully cutting out the crystal nucleus, Yi sat down on the ground. He was about to cry. If it weren't for the fact that zombies didn't have tears, he would have burst into tears. Yin Chiyue hurriedly took the crystal nucleus and carefully began the second difficult surgery, which was to implant it into Fu Jingshan's brain. Before implanting it, Yin Chiyue said to Fu Jingshan seriously, not caring whether he could hear it or not. This is Ah Qing's life. She has given her life to you. No matter what, you have to succeed. There are fluctuations. He can hear the outside world. Yi sat on the ground and panted heavily. Yin Chiyue picked up the scalpel and began the surgery. Although he didn't dare to operate on Xiaoqing, when he operated on Fu Jingshan, he completely recovered to his usual standard. He even surpassed his usual standard. The surgery went very smoothly. It was as if Fu Jingshan's body knew how to cooperate. After implanting the crystal nucleus, Xiaobai healed him. After a few minutes, Fu Jingshan suddenly opened his eyes. Ah Qing. Shu. Yin Chiyue put a finger to his lips and said, be quiet. Don't disturb Xiaobai. Reviving Xiaoqing wasn't easy. Xiaobai didn't dare to revive Xiaoqing immediately. He had been tense for too long and wasn't in a good condition. He had to recover first before he dared to do anything. Fu Jingshan was only awake. He couldn't move his body and had to recover slowly. He seemed to sense something and turned his head with difficulty. Then, he saw Xiaoqing lying in the container next to him. Only her head was left. His eyes were red. 2 drops of red tears flowed down the corners of his eyes and merged into the solution. He didn't care anymore. He didn't care whether Xiaoqing cared about him, because he was heir Dai, or because he was Fu Jingshan. After his mother died, there wouldn't be another woman in this world who was willing to give up her life for him. What more could he ask for? Why would Xiaoqing let 3 men give up their so-called male pride and persistence to share her? Because she was worth it. It was this kind of Xiaoqing that made Yin Chiyue, Yin Hanqing, and Fu Jingshan love her with all their might. They were willing to give up everything for her. Love was mutual. Xiaoqing had given them something of equal value to support the love between the 4 of them. Xiaobai recovered for a long time. Only when he recovered to his peak state did he have the courage to perform the resurrection ritual for Xiaoqing. His hands touched the container, and white light constantly poured into the container from his body. Every time more light surged in, Xiaobai's body would become a little more transparent, and his face would become a little dimmer. Xiaoqing's body continued to grow. First it was her neck, then her shoulders, her chest, and her arms. She was slowly growing outwards. By the time Xiaobai's body had fully recovered, his face was frighteningly pale. At this time, Gu Panpan came in with a group of people, all of whom were above level 6. Xiaohua jumped out of Xiaobai's body. She stretched out her tentacles and pierced into these people's bodies, absorbing their energy to replenish Xiaobai's body. If it was a normal resurrection, it would have ended here. However, Xiaoqing's brain was still missing half a crystal, so Xiaobai still needed to recover. Then, he would help Xiaoqing recover her crystal. Xiaobai only took a little bit of energy from each person, so he wouldn't hurt them. After they returned, they would be fine after a little recovery. A total of 5 groups of people came in, and Xiaobai was almost fully recovered. Then he began to restore the crystal. Chapter 689. After the restoration, Xiaobai immediately disappeared and returned to Xiaoqing's body. He probably wouldn't be able to come out for a while, because he had used up too much energy this time, and had to slowly recover. Xiaoqing didn't wake up for the entire day, so Yin Chiyue and the rest guarded her for the entire day. When Xiaoqing woke up, she saw a bunch of red-eyed rabbits glaring at her. She was startled. What's wrong with you guys? Yin Hanqing seemed to want to go up and hug her, but he didn't dare to. Xiaoqing crawled out of the container and said, what's wrong with you guys? Don't stay so far away from me. I'm not tofu that will break if you hug me. Yin Chiyue had seen Xiaoqing being dissected with his own eyes. His eyes were red as he rushed forward and hugged Xiaoqing, looking very pitiful. Then Xiaoqing was drowned. She struggled out of the sea of people and said, let me rest. Let me rest. I'm going to die. The group of people retreated a few hundred meters. Xiaoqing. After messing around for a while, Xiaoqing walked toward Fu Jingshan. He was lying in the container and could only move his head or fingers weakly. Xiaoqing touched his cheek through the container and said, "When I was lying in there, I thought about it. No matter what, you're the air dye and the air dye is Fu Jingshan. People say that smart people think too much. I'm not smart, so why am I thinking so much? Hurry up and get better. Otherwise, when we get married, you won't have a part in it." Fu Jingshan raised his finger with difficulty and pressed it against Xiaoqing's finger through the container. Everyone said that there were 81 difficulties in learning the scriptures. Between him and Xiaoqing, even if there weren't 81, there were at least 79 difficulties. People also said that those who survived a great disaster were bound to have good fortune later. They would probably be fine in the future. Xiaoqing's eyes were red. She touched the container and said, "Get well quickly. Then our family will snatch our son back and kill those two animals. Then the world will be peaceful. Then, we will be self-sufficient in Jiang City. We won't care about anything outside, okay?" Fu Jingshan nodded. God had always been fair. After making him suffer for so many years, it should be sweet for him in the future. Fu Jingshan's recovery was not fast. After all, the crystal was Xiaoqing's. It was already very good that there was no rejection. Although his recovery wasn't fast, in less than 3 days, he could run, jump, and even fight. It was just that he hadn't recovered to his peak strength yet. These few days, Xiaoqing arranged everything in Jiang City. Then, she prepared to set off to save her son. Fu Jingma hated her, so he definitely wouldn't touch her son easily. He would use her son as bait to lure her over. Xiaoqing did as he wished and fell into his trap. However, she was a big fish. When the time came, it was uncertain whether it would be the man eating the fish or the fish eating the man. They packed up their things and arranged their men. Before they were prepared to leave, a group of people arrived at the entrance of Jiang City. The one leading them was none other than the true boss of Jingdu, the current #1 leader of the Celestial Dynasty. Xiaoqing only wanted to save her son. She didn't want to communicate with this group of people at all. She thought clearly. If it weren't for this group of idiots, she wouldn't have been too greedy and become Fu Jingma's pawn. Fu Jingshan and the others wouldn't have been injured, and her son wouldn't have been taken away. Those who weren't of her kind were bound to have a different heart. This sentence might be true. The day she became a zombie, she shouldn't have had any good thoughts about humans. Chapter 690. Of course, the people in Rivertown were an exception. We should still meet them. Otherwise, what if they drag us down? Mulin said softly. Xiaoqing then went out with a murderous look. The group of people stayed at the entrance of Rivertown for a long time before the gates opened. When Xiaoqing walked out with a murderous look on her face, the group of people was really shocked. After all, Xiaoqing looked really scary like this. Moreover, they now knew that Xiaoqing was a 9th-grade person. Otherwise, how could she be on par with Fu Jingma, who was a 9th-grade person? A 9th-grade person? They really couldn't afford to offend her. Now the biggest threat wasn't Xiaoqing, but Fu Jingma, the anti-human and antisocial person. Fu Jingshan was really a big threat. Those big shots who knew about this matter would go back and sort it out. They were afraid that Fu Jingma was the one who poisoned them from the start. He really didn't care about how many people died. This kind of person was the most terrifying. The more the big shots thought about it, the more afraid they became. Xiaoqing had never taken the initiative to hurt anyone from the start. What about Fu Jingma? If Fu Jingma didn't die, they really wouldn't be at ease. Therefore, this group of big shots rushed over without stopping. The strongest among them was only a 7th-grade person. If they went to fight the 9th-grade Fu Jingma, they would be sending themselves to death. Moreover, they didn't know where Fu Jingma's nest was. They didn't know if there were other powerful people around Fu Jingma. If they really rushed over like a swarm of bees, they would be really stupid. They probably wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between Fu Jingma's teeth. After thinking about it, the only person who could deal with Fu Jingma was actually Xiaoqing. The big shots regretted it. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have done it in the first place. If they had been on good terms with Xiaoqing back then, they wouldn't have to be so thick-skinned as to come and beg her. Xiaoqing came out aggressively and said, What do you want from me? If you have something to say, say it. If not, get lost. The big shots were all a bit embarrassed. The one from the capital stood up and said, I'll apologize to the city lord on behalf of those people. We're all close to 50 years old, or even over 50 years old. If it weren't for the sake of the entire country, we really wouldn't be able to throw away our face like this. He smiled bitterly and said, City Lord Xiao, we were wrong in the past, but this time. Xiao Qing interrupted him, but she didn't say anything else. After all, she still had some respect for this old man. Back then, you had repeated a sentence countless times. Those who are not of my race will have different intentions. Now, I feel that this sentence is very true. Jiang City will never come into contact with you again. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. I still have other things to do. Then, she waved her hand, and the high-level mutants behind her all rushed out. When the old man saw this scene, he knew that they had come in vain, because Xiao Qing had never intended to let Fu Jingma go. However, he also knew that Xiao Qing's attitude was Xiao Qing's attitude, and their attitude was their attitude. I hereby guarantee that if any base takes the initiative to attack Jiang City in the future, we'll punish it in the name of the capital. City Lord Xiao, be careful this time. We really can't do anything. The only thing we can do is to give you the right to use the last missile. The old man's words could be said to be sincere. Xiao Qing turned around and glanced at him. Then, she waved her hand and asked Mu Lin to negotiate with this matter. She then left with the others. The one who led the way was Yi Wuxia. He was probably the person who was most familiar with Fu Jingma's base in Jiang City. City S has been completely occupied. After that, under Professor Zhang's request, they developed the underground city. The underground city is bigger than City S. If there's no internal staff leading the way, I'm afraid that I'll get lost in the maze outside. Yi Wuxia told her everything he knew in detail. Chapter 691. Xiao Qing asked, What kind of person is Dr. Jiang? Have you seen his real face? Xiao Qing was most curious about Dr. Jiang. Yi Wuxia shook his head and said, Dr. Jiang usually stays in his lab and doesn't come out. As an experimental subject, I have seen him before, but he wears a mask all day long, so I can't see his face. Yi said slowly, Among the researchers in the country, there is no one with the surname Jiang, who is both powerful and famous. This was what confused them the most. Dr. Jiang's ability was very outstanding, which could be seen from his transformation of Fu Jingma. Fu Jingma was originally an ordinary person, but he was transformed into a level 9 paranormal. As far as Yi was concerned, he couldn't do it either. We'll know when the time comes, Xiao Qing said indifferently. Yi was still very confused. In my memory, there shouldn't be such a person in our country. Maybe he awakened some kind of ability after the apocalypse, which helped him greatly in his transformation of the human body. Who knows? Yan Qiyu joked. It's useless to guess now. In short, we'll know when we see him. Xiao Qing said seriously. The opponent we're about to face is the strongest I've ever seen in my life. You all have to be vigilant. I don't want any of you to get hurt when the time comes. The others also became serious. Xiao Qing was right. The biggest enemy of mankind was laxity. There was always a chance to defeat a strong enemy, but people often lost because of their own laxity. This was a very sad and laughable matter. When they arrived in S City, it was afternoon and the sky wasn't dark yet. Xiao Qing had participated in the cleanup of S City, and she had been to S City many times to search for resources. It could be said that she was very familiar with S City. The entrance is at the City Hall. Yi Weozhua was in charge of leading the way. All the vehicles were parked outside, and the metahumans alighted from the vehicles. They tacitly formed 3 teams. One was in charge of the left, one was in charge of the right, and the last one was in charge of the rear. Moreover, the 3 teams just happened to surround Xiao Qing, and the others in the center. Xiao Qing and the others were like the sharp edge of a knife, and they were the side edge and the handle of the knife. Once something goes wrong, even I won't be able to save you, because I won't be able to save you in time. I've brought 300 people here, and I hope that when I go back, there will be 301 people. I don't want to see anyone injured, But if you don't care about yourselves, then there's nothing I can do. Xiaoqing said coldly. Remember what I said. The rest of the people shouted in unison. Yes. Let's go. Xiaoqing waved her hand, and they officially stepped into S City. In S City, even the street lights were not on, and it was dead silent. Other than the lighting system in their hands, everywhere else was dark. It was pitch black, and it gave people the feeling that there were countless people hiding in the dark. Even the places they walked past would become pitch black, as if the road was swallowed up. Everyone was on high alert, because they knew very well that Xiaoqing was telling the truth. When danger really came, if they maintained their vigilance and could resist for a while, their teammates would be able to save them in time. If they didn't have their vigilance and were killed directly, even God wouldn't be able to save them. No one wanted to die here. They all had families, wives, children, siblings, and parents. They wanted to go back alive and see their families, but at the same time, they also wanted to bring Little Bun back. Then, they would eliminate Fu Jingma and his gang. Just like Xiaoqing described, they would be self-sufficient, free, and live their own lives in Jiang City. Chapter 692. After walking out for a while, Xiaoqing felt that something was wrong. If she remembered correctly, the original survivor base of S City had been moved in after the elimination of S City. The entire S City should have at least thousands, or even tens of thousands of people. After all, the survivor base of S City was one of the largest bases in the country. But now there was no one in the entire S City. If they had all become zombies, there should at least be some zombies. But let alone zombies, not even an ant could be seen. Xiaoqing was very worried because it was related to her son and the people from Jiang City. She had to be very careful. Xiaoqing raised her hand, and Guangguang appeared on top of her head. In the past, Guangguang was rooted in the ground. But this time, Guangguang floated on top of Xiaoqing's head and moved with Xiaoqing's movement. As a tree, when Guangguang was rooted in the ground, it was definitely the most powerful time. But now, because of many reasons, Xiaoqing could only put it on top of her head. And Guangguang originally had a certain range. Now that it covered everyone, its power would definitely be weakened when it spread out. But everyone was in the range of Guangguang. At least their surroundings were bright, which also ensured a certain degree of safety. There seemed to be something in the dark, ready to move. Xiaoqing quietly flicked out a few seeds. After the seeds fell to the ground, they became plants of daughter. The daughter matured very quickly, and then more seeds would fall off. The seeds of daughter were very small and light. After falling off, they quickly scattered in all directions with the wind. These daughter seeds would take root in the entire S City. They would all become Xiaoqing's eyes. Once there was any movement, Xiaoqing would feel it through them. There's someone. Xiaoqing quietly reminded the people around her. She asked them to pass the message to the people behind them one by one, so as not to arouse the vigilance of those who were lying in ambush in the dark. Just as they were about to reach the city hall, the end of the line was attacked. This was a very common method. In the dark, they would attack the end of the group and quietly drag away a few people to cause panic. After a few times, the whole group would be in chaos. It was a pity that they had met Jiang City, which was Xiaoqing's team. This trick was directly useless. The people at the end of the line maintained a high level of vigilance. As soon as they approached, they were discovered. Then the last row launched an attack on them. This was how the team was organized. Every 6 ordinary superpowered people, or zombies, would be accompanied by a squad leader. The squad leaders were all at the peak of level 5, or even level 6. This way, even if the person who ambushed them was at least LV 8, they could still react quickly. As long as they delayed for a moment, the experts in the team would appear. The first one to appear was definitely Xiaoqing, who had the ability to teleport. The vines wrapped around her hand like a glove, and when she punched the attacker's head hard, the attacker's head was hit by the vines. The thorns on the vines pierced the attacker's head, killing him instantly. The others also reacted quickly. After leaving a few corpses, the attacker disappeared into the darkness again. Xiaoqing held the lantern and looked at the corpses on the ground. They looked like lizards with tails and short and thick limbs. Under the scales, there was a human body. Their teeth were very strong. Once they bit people, they would quickly drag them into the darkness, or bite off a part of their limbs, which could cause panic. Chapter 693. Creating panic and chaos was the goal of those people in the dark. After all, Xiaoqing's team was really strong. If they fought head-to-head, it would be hard to tell who would win. That was why they had plotted in the dark. However, they didn't expect that their ploy wouldn't have any effect. Instead, they lost some people. Continue to be on high alert. If they don't succeed in one attack, they will think of other ways, Xiaoqing said calmly. This group of people was the most unscrupulous. They would probably do anything to get what they wanted. However, they didn't suffer a second attack until they entered the government building. The moment they stepped into the building, all the lights were turned on. The base chief of S City stood in front of Xiaoqing and said with a smile, "Welcome to the realm of gods." Is he still in middle school? No, he's so old. How can he still be in middle school? Gu Panpan whispered. Xiaoqing had long forgotten the base chief's name. The only thing she remembered was that he wasn't a good person. After looking at the base chief, Xiaoqing said impatiently, "Get out of my way. Don't block my way." The base chief's smile stiffened. The script didn't go as he expected. Xiaoqing was rough and didn't give him any room to play. The base chief stopped smiling and clapped his hands. Xiaoqing saw that outside the building, there were many zombies, mutant beasts and cyborgs. They surrounded the government building, as if they were going to catch everyone in one fell swoop. Many cyborgs appeared behind the base chief of S City's survivor base, protecting him in the middle. A pair of wings appeared behind his back, lifting him into the air. Perhaps he felt that he looked quite pretentious, as he stood in the air proudly. "I've already said that you've come to the realm of gods. Now, I'll give you two choices. The first is to surrender obediently, and that will save us the trouble. The second is, of course, you overestimate yourselves, so don't blame us for being impolite." Xiaoqing suddenly appeared behind him and kicked him to the ground. When the base chief tried to resist, Xiaoqing's pressure pressed down heavily on his body. Xiaoqing tore off a pair of chicken wings like she was tearing off spicy strips, and threw them aside. "I used to think that you weren't a good person, but now I realize that you're not only a bad person, but also have a problem with your brain." The base chief screamed and tried to resist, but his arms and legs were easily broken. "Bullshit realm of gods. I'll give you two choices. Get out of my way now. Otherwise, I won't even give you the chance to get out of my way," Xiaoqing said coldly. "Attack! Attack!" The base chief shouted himself hoarse. "Dr. Jiang is God. God can resurrect us." "Oh, then let me see how he'll resurrect you." Xiaoqing stepped on his head. It was like stepping on an egg. Red and white blood flowed out. It was dirty. Xiaoqing was a little disgusted by it. At this time, the people around them had already rushed over. Xiaoqing saw many familiar faces among them. They were all members of the survivor base in S City. She didn't need to think to know that the base chief, that bastard, must have turned to Dr. Jiang. She guessed that the entire survivor base in S City had been transformed and used for experiments. Xiaoqing raised her hand and released Big Flower and Small Flower. Big Flower let it out to fill its stomach. Little Flower was responsible for absorbing energy to replenish Xiaoqing's body. Chapter 694. In the past, Little Blossom could only absorb the energy in the blood. As Xiaoqing leveled up, Little Blossom's abilities increased. Now, even zombies could be used as nourishment by Little Blossom. After absorbing the energy, he would feed it back to Xiaoqing. That was why Xiaoqing was not afraid of group fights. The more people there were, the better. She would never face the predicament of not having any supernatural abilities, because everyone would become her nourishment. After Xiaoqing was the first to rush forward, the others followed. Xiaoqing was at the front. One person could hold back 10,000 people. The people behind her were under less pressure. Xiaoqing was like a sharp knife. She was the first to stab into the enemy and create a gap. Then, the group behind her started to harvest the enemy's lives. When the zombies, mutated beasts, and cyborgs were all either dead or running away, Xiaoqing nodded. There were almost no casualties on Jiangqing's side. There were only a few sporadic people who were either too excited or had rushed into the enemy's group in a murderous frenzy and were injured. This was simply glorious, an achievement that couldn't be more glorious. But Xiaoqing knew very well that these people were just cannon fodder. The real dangerous people were behind. Yi Wuxia led them to the entrance of the underground city. The first to go down was Yi Wuxia. He was in charge of leading the way. Behind him was Xiaoqing. Then, there was the group of high-ranking officers. After the group of officers, there were small teams. The ones in charge of covering the rear were the experts. The underground city of S-City was built very deep. They walked for about 10 minutes before they reached the real entrance. When they reached the entrance, they saw a handsome young man standing there. He seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Xiaoqing raised her hand and stopped the people behind her from moving forward. The young man immediately said, "I've been waiting here for Miss Xiaoqing for a long time. Please follow me. The rest of you should wait outside." "Are we going to wait outside just because you want us to?" Mu Lin sneered and said, "Aren't you overthinking things?" The young man was not angry at all. He chuckled and said, "The doctor said that Miss Xiao can only bring 2 people in. It's best if they are Yin Yi and Fu Jingshan. It's fine if I don't bring them, but the others, it's better if they wait outside. Otherwise, who knows what the doctor will do to your son." This is a blatant threat. Gu Panpan gritted her teeth. Her body was trembling, but she knew that they couldn't act rashly. Otherwise, the little bun would be in danger. Xiaoqing stopped the excited crowd and said, "Please lead the way." Yin Yi and Fu Jingshan automatically stood behind her. Although they didn't know why Dr. Jiang asked them to follow him, they could at least protect Xiaoqing if they followed him. This was the most important thing. "Jingshan, come with me. Yin Yi, you'd better stay outside and wait." Xiaoqing looked at the door. Her eyes became calmer. Since they were already here, she could only go forward. Even if she knew there was a trap in front of her, she would step into it and smash it into pieces. "I'll go with you." Yin Yi followed her directly. His attitude was very firm. There were only 2 places in total. With one more person, he could at least take a blow for Xiaoqing. Even if he could only be of a little use, it was very good. "This way, please." The young man raised his hand with a smile and made a gesture of invitation. After Xiaoqing and the other 2 walked in, he stopped the people behind them. "Please wait." Chapter 695. Then he entered and closed the door. Gu Panpan was so angry that she stomped her feet. Mu Lin, on the other hand, was calmer. She squatted down and looked at the place where Xiaoqing was standing. There was a daughter with drooping leaves. Mu Lin and Xiaoqing always had a tacit understanding. "Listen to my orders later. As soon as I receive a message from Qing, we will rush in." Xiaoqing and the other 2 followed behind the young man and walked in slowly. Behind the door was a glass pipe filled with liquid. The liquid was green, but it was not the kind of green that symbolized vitality. Instead, it was a lifeless dark green. There were many corpses soaked in the pipe. In other words, they were all test subjects. Their sides, heads, and feet were all transparent. Many of the test subjects were stuck to the glass and looked at Xiaoqing and the others with their dead fish eyes. It was fine if there were only 1 or 2 of them, but there were so many of them. As far as the eye could see, all of them had pale and wrinkled faces. Their cold and vicious eyes sent chills down one's spine. However, the young man was very proud. These are all test subjects of Dr. Jiang. After a while, they can leave the solution and become real immortal warriors. It was Dr. Jiang who gave them new lives. Xiaoqing felt inexplicably disgusted. The so-called immortal warriors are these things that are neither human nor ghost. They are not even zombies. The young man had been very kind, but he could not help but feel a little agitated. Even his voice changed. They are Dr. Jiang's creations. New creations have never appeared in this world, just like how God created birds, animals, insects, fish, and humans. You have given them a new life, allowing them to possess immortal bodies. They will be grateful to you. Xiaoqing looked at the young man who seemed to have been brainwashed. Then she said calmly, "They may have been normal people before. Even if they did not have a healthy family, at least they had healthy bodies. But now, I don't think they are creations. They are just failed test subjects. They are better off dead than alive. The young man's face was a little ferocious. Those who do not believe in God will be abandoned by God. How would you know how great the doctor's pioneering work is? Yi tugged at Xiaoqing's sleeve and said, Ah Qing, you don't have to argue with him. Can't you see that he's already gone mad? He won't listen to anything you say. He's a lunatic now, a brainwashed lunatic. The young man sneered and said, You stupid and ignorant people, even God won't save you. This world will eventually be ruled by the doctor. There was no cure for the brainwashed retard, and the late stage of Chinibu. They could completely give up on treatment. Xiaoqing looked at him expressionlessly, and didn't bother to pay attention to him anymore. Others might be scared walking on this plank road, but Xiaoqing only felt sad. In addition to coldness and viciousness, there was only numbness and despair in the eyes of these floating corpse-like test subjects. Xiaoqing even saw several familiar faces, who used to be the survivors of S-City. They were sad and pitiful. However, Xiaoqing couldn't even protect herself, let alone save them. Along the way, the young man kept talking about God, the Creator, and the Creator. Xiaoqing and the other two looked at him, as if he was crazy. When they reached the door, the young man slowly calmed down. He knocked on the door and said, Doctor, I've brought them here. Come in. A very gentle voice sounded. As soon as he thought of this voice, Yinye's face changed. It became extremely pale and ugly. The young man pushed the door open and stood aside. He watched Xiaoqing and the others go in, then closed the door and guarded the door. After Xiaoqing entered, she found that this room was similar to Yin Chiyue's laboratory. It should also be a simple laboratory, and then it was temporarily used as a reception room. Sitting behind the table was a man who looked delicate, elegant, and gentle. His face even looked a little immature. He smiled and said, Welcome, City Lord Xiao. Welcome, Mr. Fu. Welcome, Big Brother. Chapter 696. Yinye's limbs turned cold. He never thought that he would see his younger brother here. He didn't even dare to think about his younger brother's identity. In his impression, his younger brother was still the sunny youth, who had never been dispirited even when he was in a wheelchair. He wasn't the person in front of him who had a gentle smile, but made him feel cold to the bone. Big brother. The youth felt wronged. Can you not look at me like that? I feel like killing someone. Yinye looked at his younger brother's raised head. It was still the same sunny and gentle face as he said those vicious and cold words. How could it be? Was this really his younger brother? Was it still the same sunny and gentle youth in his impression? Was it just an illusion? The last time he saw his younger brother was a long time ago. The youth had just celebrated his 16th birthday. He had soft hair and gentle eyes. He would say to him reluctantly, Big brother, when will you come back next time? You will definitely come back for my 18th birthday, right? His career meant that he rarely had time to reunite with his family. However, as long as he had time, he would definitely come home. That was because he had a cute little brother at home. His little brother was too lonely at home alone. The youth stood up from behind the table and walked out slowly. He even spun around to show off to Yinye. Big brother, look, aren't my legs beautiful? I chose many people, and finally found a pair of legs that are most suitable for me. Are you happy? I can walk now. Yinye couldn't help but take a step back. His heart was cold, and he was even a little afraid. The youth in front of him was too unfamiliar. Big brother, are you afraid of me? The youth looked at Yinye aggrievedly. However, the light in his eyes was extremely cold. But I'm so happy, because it's been a long time since you've looked at me so attentively. Yinye closed his eyes. After a while he took a deep breath and said, You're not Yinhua. You're not my younger brother. My younger brother wouldn't be like this. Yinhua's face twisted for a moment. He said angrily, Isn't my appearance good? No. I've never felt so good before. I have legs now. I can walk freely in this world. I can do whatever I want. I can control many people's lives. If I want them to be happy, they will be happy. If I want them to cry, they will cry. Isn't it good to have such a powerful me? Yinhua looked at her hands with infatuation and murmured, Brother, I'm really happy. In the future, there will be no one else in your eyes, and no one will be able to separate you and me. I will create a kingdom that belongs to the two of us. Brother, are you really happy too? Xiaoqing watched coldly from the side. She felt that Yinhua was definitely crazy. He was obviously abnormal, but she did not know why Yinhua had become like this. She remembered that not long after she had met Yinyi had once entrusted her with the task of finding his younger brother. She had always thought that this pair of brothers should have a very good relationship, but she had never imagined that Yinhua was actually such a person. In a certain aspect, Yinyi and Yinhua were very similar. For example, their stubbornness and insanity. The only difference was that Yinyi's stubbornness and insanity would not harm others. As for Yinhua, he had destroyed the lives of countless people. You're not my younger brother. Stay away from me. Yinyi suddenly opened his eyes and said coldly, my younger brother doesn't treat human lives like ants. He's a very kind person, a very cheerful and optimistic person. Chapter 697. Yinhua's eyes were filled with tears. Brother, you're fierce to me. You're fierce to me, because of those insignificant people. You used to treat me very well. You've changed. You've changed. Yinyi slowly calmed down. I know why you chose this path. I advise you to stop as soon as possible. Return Xiaozi to me and stop your evil deeds. Yinhua was indeed a little neurotic. When he heard Yinyi's words, his expression instantly changed, and he became that cultured, refined, and somewhat gentle youth. I forgot that we still have guests. Brother, I'll catch up with you after I'm done entertaining the guests, okay? Don't be angry with me. We have a very long time to slowly talk. He pressed a button on the table and said excitedly, Brother, I'll bring you and the guests to see my achievements, okay? Yinyi wanted to say something, but was stopped by Xiaoqing. They could all see that Yinhua was not in a good state. His mental state was abnormal, so they could not provoke him anymore. It was better to go along with him for now. After the button was pressed, a door appeared behind Yinhua. Yinhua excitedly led them in. The entire underground city is divided into 3 areas. One area is where my experimental subjects live. The other area is where my citizens live. The rest are all experimental areas. Brother, don't wander off. Follow behind me. When Yinhua passed by, the lights lit up one by one. There were transparent glass covers on both sides. All the rooms here were made of glass, and they could clearly see the things inside. Yinyi pointed to a room and said, Inside are all poisonous bugs that I raised using the method of raising goo. When the strongest poisonous bug devours the other poisonous bugs, it will be able to dominate this body and become a powerful poison man. However, their willpower is very weak. Often, before the strongest poisonous bug can appear, they will not be able to withstand it and die first. They are really useless. The few of them turned their gazes over and saw a person lying on the platform in the room. His limbs and neck were chained to the platform. Other than the important parts of his body, he was naked. The people outside could clearly see that the surface of his body was constantly bulging with small bumps. It was as if something was drilling in and out of his body. He screamed in pain, but his voice was completely blocked out. Outside, only his ferocious face could be seen, filled with madness and despair. But these are just small things. The works that I'm more proud of are still in front. Yinhua's eyes were sparkling. She turned around and looked at Yinyi, as if she was waiting for praise. Yinyi's face was pale, not because of fear, but because he was still in pain. He really wanted to know why his brother had become like this. It was so terrifying that it made people feel that he was a demon that had descended to the human world. Brother, look at this. It's amazing. But I haven't succeeded yet, because there are too few pregnant women. I can't find many unborn children to prove the results of my experiment. Yinhua said with some regret. Inside the glass box, there were babies that had just taken shape or not yet taken shape. They all looked strange, as if they had just been experimented on. However, the truth was that they had just experienced a human experiment. Yinhua had always felt that the purest thing was an unborn child. Children were also the most malleable. Once they succeeded, the experimental product would definitely be the strongest. Before they were born, I cut them out of their mother's stomach and used my own energy liquid as amniotic fluid. I placed them in the amniotic fluid and infused them with some energy liquid and corpse poison. I let them soak in the amniotic fluid and slowly absorb the energy. After soaking in the amniotic fluid to a certain extent, I carried out a second experiment. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a single successful experiment until now. Chapter 698. Inhua sighed. I've only found 8 pregnant women in the entire city. If there were more, I might have succeeded. Yinyi was so angry that he was about to lose his mind. Everything that Yinyi had done had stained his hands with blood. He was already beyond redemption. Keeping him alive was really a scourge. That sunny and kind-hearted young man was really very far away from Yinhua. Yinhua kept introducing his experimental products. His eyes were filled with pride and joy. Yinyi was expressionless, but his nails slowly sank into his palms. Slowly they reached the end. Yinhua took them to the elevator and continued to go down. The last floor was completely made up of his laboratory. It was full of experimental products. When they walked out of the elevator, they saw a huge hall. There was a lot of equipment in the middle of the hall. In the middle of the hall was a huge container. Fu Jingma was in the container. Countless tubes were inserted into Fu Jingma's body. The tubes extended all the way to the bottom. This is my most successful experimental product so far. Although there are still many flaws, he is already very strong, Yinhua said excitedly. If this continues sooner or later, I will be able to create an existence as strong as God. Yinyi said expressionlessly, what about Xiaozi? You mean that child? He is really the best experimental product I have ever seen. His body is very strong, and his ability is very special. He looks like a human but also like a zombie. It's simply wonderful. Do you know, brother? Yinhua picked up a remote control from the cabinet and pressed it. A wall was immediately pushed open. And in the middle was a container that looked very similar to the one Fu Jingma was in. It was filled with a very strange colored liquid, and Little Bun was soaked in it. Little Bun's body was covered with tubes, and the tubes were connected in another direction. Xiaoqing's eyes turned red. So did Yinyi. Yinhua was still talking nonstop. Brother, he is really perfect. I have the confidence to make him the strongest experimental product. He will be even stronger than Fu Jingma. He will be an existence that is infinitely close to God. Yinyi couldn't take it anymore. He punched Yinhua's face. You are simply a beast. No, even an animal would understand human nature better than you. Then, Yinyi quickly stepped forward and suddenly smashed the container containing the small steamed buns. Crash! The container suddenly shattered, and the liquid instantly flowed out. Yinhua touched her face and muttered to herself, Brother! You hit me. You actually hit me. You're not my brother. My brother can't bear to hit me. My brother can't bear to hit me. As his expression slowly turned ferocious, the floor cracked bit by bit. In the end, countless black tentacles drilled out from the ground. Yinyi pulled out the tubes from Little Bun's body and threw Little Bun to Xiaoqing. After Xiaoqing caught him, she probed Little Bun's body with her special ability. Fortunately, probably because of time, Yinhua didn't have time to do anything to Little Bun. Little Bun's body didn't have any abnormalities. This was probably a blessing in disguise. As the tentacles drilled out one by one, the container containing Fu Jingma also shattered. Fu Jingma opened his scarlet eyes and instantly turned into the large worm that Xiaoqing had seen before. What was even more frightening was that Fu Jingma's body was no longer connected to the tubes, but to the black tentacles that drilled out from the ground. Xiaoqing quickly retreated. Then, she stretched out her vines and grabbed Yinye's waist, trying to drag him over. Yinhua immediately pointed at Xiaoqing angrily. Kill her. Fu Jingma, who was motionless just a moment ago, instantly pounced on Xiaoqing. His worm mouth opened, and when he pounced in front of Xiaoqing, he began to spray dark green venom. Fu Jingshan quickly hugged Xiaoqing and Little Bun and rolled to the side to avoid the venom. Then, he quickly jumped up and landed on Fu Jingma's head. Punch after punch, he ruthlessly hit Fu Jingma's head. However, Yinhua stretched out her hand and broke Xiaoqing's vines. She looked at Xiaoqing with bloodthirsty eyes. You want to steal my brother? Chapter 699. Do you want to snatch my brother too? Inhua's eyes were red like a demon. Why do you all want to snatch my brother? Everyone is like this. I want to kill all of you. Yes, I want to destroy this world. No one can snatch my brother from me. All of you deserve to die. Following his roar, Fu Jingma went crazy as if he had been provoked. He pounced on Xiaoqing, and his venom kept spewing out. Guang Guang came out from the ground and held up a shield. When the venom hit the shield immediately started to melt. However, this had already bought some time for Xiaoqing and the rest. Xiaoqing carried Little Bun and quickly retreated. She had to put Little Bun in a safe place before she could join the battle. Yi jumped up and kicked Fu Jingma's head heavily. His tentacles quickly stretched out and tied Fu Jingma up. Ah Qing, you go first. Xiaoqing had no choice but to release the flower. The flower immediately swallowed Little Bun. Its action was not to eat Little Bun, but to put Little Bun in its flower. It could control itself and not secrete any corrosive liquid. This way, its flower head would be the best protection. As long as it was not destroyed, Little Bun would be fine. Moreover, once it was attacked, Xiaoqing would also sense it. Xiaoqing kissed the flower's petals and said, "Baby, take my son and hide. If something happens to me, take him away. Do you understand? There are my people outside. Take my son and go find them. You must ensure that my son is safe before I die. Don't come back to find me." The flower rubbed its leaves and made a rustling sound as if it was wailing. After a long time, it lowered its head dispiritedly and nodded in agreement. "Thank you." Xiaoqing touched the flower and walked back in. No matter what, she would kill Fu Jingma and Inhua today unless she died first. As long as these two people were killed, they would no longer have any enemies. Moreover, among the humans, Jiang City already had enough deterrence. It could be said that Jiang City was already very safe. In this battle, only victory was allowed. For the sake of her friends and family, she would also kill these two people. When Xiaoqing entered the room, Inhua was already in a berserk state. His eyes were blood red, as if they were about to bleed. "Brother, you attacked me?" Yi was expressionless. He was heartbroken, but he was already numb to the pain. No matter what had caused his younger brother to become like this, there was one thing that was certain. Inhua had to die. He had committed too many sins, so many that it was simply unforgivable. Rather than letting him harm everyone like a madman, it was better to let him die a quick death. Fu Jingma had gotten a little stronger, but there was Fu Jingshan, who was almost at the 9th level, Yin Yi, who was at the 8th level, and Xiaoqing, who was very close to the 9th level. The closer one was to level 9, the more they would comprehend. Fu Jingshan had once said that although he had only entered level 9 for a short period of time, he had already touched the threshold. The reason why level 9 was different was that after reaching level 9, one would comprehend their own comprehension. In one's own domain, this person's existence was like a god. However, it wasn't so easy to comprehend a domain. He still couldn't figure it out. As for Fu Jingma, he had been forcefully upgraded and modified. He didn't have a domain at all, and couldn't comprehend one. This was also why Fu Jingshan said that although Fu Jingma was very strong, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't be dealt with. Chapter 700. He was at most a fake 9th level fighter. He only had the power of a 9th level fighter, but he didn't have a domain, so he wasn't that scary. Fu Jingshan was in charge of fighting Fu Jingma head-on, while Xiaoqing was in charge of harassing Fu Jingshan and strengthening him. Ever since the previous surgery, Fu Jingshan and Xiaoqing not only had a deeper understanding of each other, but their powers also seemed to be interconnected. 1 + 1 sometimes didn't necessarily equal 2. It could even be greater than 2. When the two of them worked together, their combat power was definitely on par with a 9th level fighter. Fu Jingma's physical body was too strong. For a moment the battle was in a stalemate. However, he kept spitting out venom. The venom slowly formed a layer on the ground, and soon, there was no place to stand. There was only light supporting a pure land. Chen Juyao stood on the tree branch and kept attacking Fu Jingma from the side. Fu Jingma, who didn't get any results in a short period of time, looked a little anxious. He kept roaring and more tentacles came out of his body. Fu Jingxian took the opportunity and directly punched Fu Jingma's head into the ground. Xiao Qing took this opportunity to quickly release her spatial powers. A spatial crack appeared where Fu Jingma's face was. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Fu Jingma screamed and rolled a little. This just happened to expose his face. Yi immediately used his tentacles to temporarily hold Fu Jingma in place. Then Fu Jingxian attacked Fu Jingma's face fiercely. When he stopped, Fu Jingma's face had already caved in. Fu Jingma twitched. The place where his face used to be had turned into a black hole. One could even see the wriggling flesh inside. Xiao Qing persisted. In an instant, sharp vines shot into the hole. No one knew how deep it went, but a large part of the vines disappeared. Fu Jingma twitched, but his body slowly swelled up. He swung his tail fiercely and smashed Fu Jingxian against the wall. Fu Jingxian's body was deeply embedded in the wall. Xiao Qing's vines were still in his body. He swung them wildly and dragged them over. Xiao Qing lost her balance and was dragged in front of Fu Jingma. He repeated the same trick and opened his worm mouth to bite her. Xiao Qing quickly gave up on the circle of vines. After leaping forward, she glared fiercely at the worm's eyes and used the rebound force to jump up. Her gaze was cold and her entire body exuded a murderous aura and determination. She tore open a crack in space, and in the next second, she appeared inside Fu Jingma's body. The outside was incomparably hard, but she didn't believe that the inside of his stomach would be as hard. Xiao Qing's gaze was cold. After entering Fu Jingma's stomach, a sharp blade formed by the power of space appeared in her hand. Then she stabbed it fiercely. Corrosive liquid and blood instantly gushed out. Xiao Qing, who was prepared, instantly formed a layer of wrought tan armor on her body, temporarily blocking the corrosion of the liquid. In the next second, she held the sharp blade and ruthlessly tore open Fu Jingma's stomach. No matter how hard something was, it would still be soft on the inside. Xiao Qing tore all the way to the bottom, directly into Fu Jingma's stomach. There was a hole. At this moment, the liquid had already corroded most of the wrought tan armor on her body. Xiao Qing turned around and threw a crack in space into Fu Jingma's stomach. After that she dodged. Once she reached the light, she quickly removed the wrought tan armor and cut off the flesh that was stained with a little bit of liquid. This was a battle tactic she had thought of a long time ago. However, she could only use this move completely against a large opponent. However, the result of the battle was very obvious. Didn't you see that Fu Jingma's stomach had already exploded? Chapter 701. It was as if he was dancing in an old disco. He was in so much pain that he was rolling on the ground. However, as he rolled, his wound slowly healed and his body became even bigger. This wasn't a good sign. The last time, Fu Jingma didn't know how to heal himself, but he had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties. This time, he had the ability to heal himself. Could they really win this battle? I don't believe in your nonsense. Yi gritted his teeth. Taking advantage of the fact that Fu Jingma hadn't fully recovered, he rushed forward and stabbed the knife into Fu Jingma's bug eyeball. Fu Jingma was still rolling on the ground in pain. However, something terrifying happened. After he pulled the knife out of his eye slowly healed. Very quickly, it was as if he hadn't been injured at all. Not only that, he gave off the feeling that he was even stronger. This was simply a fact that made them despair. The three of them looked at each other and could see the fatigue and helplessness in each other's eyes. Yinhua faintly said, "Big brother, you must have been led astray by this group of people. Don't worry, I'll save you very soon. At that time, you'll definitely become the old big brother. And even better than before. Big brother, come with me, okay? I can give you immortality." Yi didn't want to talk to him at all, so Yinhua blamed everything on Xiao Qing and the others. "You must have taught my brother bad. I'm going to kill you. This way my brother will come back to my side." Yinhua's blabbering gave Xiao Qing a conjecture. The current situation was very obvious. Fu Jingma had already lost his own will and was under Yinhua's control. Then, if she killed Yinhua, would Fu Jingma stop moving because there was no one to command him? Or perhaps he would be easier to deal with. Xiao Qing looked at Yinhua, but didn't make a move. No matter what, Yinhua was Yinye's younger brother. She had to take care of her own family's feelings. No matter how a scumbag like Yinhua died, he deserved it. However, if he became hostile with Yinyi because of this, then it really wasn't worth it at all. Xiaoqing whispered her guess to Yinyi. Yinyi whispered, "He's not normal now. He's a madman with great power. If we don't kill him, I really don't know what the world will become. Qing, kill him. Give him a quick death and end all of this." Xiaoqing nodded and looked at Yinhua's position. Yinhua was standing behind Fujingma and was well protected. It would be difficult to attack him. The few of them pretended to continue probing and kept attacking Fujingma. Fujingma's body was riddled with wounds, but these wounds would slowly heal. He kept screaming and roaring in a hoarse voice. Although he kept getting injured, Xiaoqing and the others weren't unharmed. The most important thing was that they couldn't fully recover from their injuries so quickly. Even though Xiaoqing had the ability to heal, her ability was really limited. At least compared to her fighting ability, it was much weaker. While Xiaoqing was attacking Fujingma, she had been secretly observing him. She was observing Fujingma's position, and then she was calculating how she could get past Fujingma and kill Yinhua. Although she could use instant transmission, she had already used it before. If she used it again, her opponent would definitely be vigilant to a certain extent. It wouldn't be so easy to succeed. Therefore, they had to think of a way. As long as they killed Yinhua, everything would be fine. Xiaoqing secretly gave Fu Jingxian and Yinyi a look. The two of them immediately understood and began to attack fiercely. One of them attacked Fujingma's head, while the other attacked Fujingma's stomach. They cooperated well, and their attacks were steady, accurate, and ruthless. Every attack caused Fujingma unbearable pain. Although he could heal quickly, the pain would still remain in his heart. Layer by layer, it made him suffer more and more. After blinding Fujingma's eyes again, Xiaoqing suddenly changed her direction and aimed her attack at Yinhua. The moment she attacked with her vines, she instantly moved behind Yinhua. Yinhua's weak body was right in front of her. As long as Xiaoqing ruthlessly punched the top of Yinhua's head, she would be able to end this battle. She quickly threw a punch at Yinye's head. Chapter 702. Yinhua turned back and smiled at her. His white teeth were arranged in 2 rows, but they gave off a cold feeling. Fujingma turned back abruptly. His body suddenly swayed, and he directly ignored the other 2 people and rushed towards Xiaoqing. Fu Jingxian and Yinye's full-strength attack broke through his defense for the first time. His tail was badly mutilated, but Fujingma didn't seem to feel anything. He directly crashed into Xiaoqing and forcefully smashed Xiaoqing into the ground. 80% of the buildings in the underground city were made of glass. After Xiaoqing was smashed into the ground, she realized that there was something underground. At the bottom of the dungeon, there was a huge hollow. The hollow was filled with the same liquid that they had seen outside. There was a huge worm soaking in the liquid. The worm looked very similar to Fujingma, but it was much bigger than Fujingma. Most importantly, there were many tubes on its body that were connected to Fujingma. Xiaoqing broke through the surrounding floorboards with difficulty. She rolled forward and gave up on attacking Yinhua. Instead, she directly rushed towards Fujingma. Fujingma raised his head and heavily slammed his body down. It seemed that he wanted to smash Xiaoqing into a meat patty. Xiaoqing instantly released her vines and formed a shield above her. This shield was very short and couldn't stop Fujingma at all. However, it could buy her some time. At this moment, Xiaoqing had already rushed under Fujingma's body. The space crack instantly cut the tubes connected to Fujingma's body. Then Fujingma heavily slammed down. Xiaoqing was directly smashed into the floorboards for the second time. The sound of bones breaking could be heard clearly. At this moment, Fu Jingxian and Yinyi, whose eyes were red, rushed over crazily. They directly cut off Fujingma's tail from the wound they had caused previously. As for Xiaoqing, she tore open his abdomen again. Filthy blood gushed out and dripped onto the ground. Xiaoqing instantly appeared behind Fu Jingxian, panting heavily. She looked up and saw the big worm wriggling on the ground with difficulty. Dirty blood slowly flowed out, but he only moved for a while and did not recover as quickly as before. Yinhua's gaze was cold. Clearly he had calmed down a little. He looked at Xiaoqing and said, "No wonder my brother cares about you. It turns out that you do have some ability. However, defeating this trash doesn't mean anything. You still have to die." After leaving the tube, Fu Jingma seemed to regain consciousness. He lay on the ground, and his vision started to blur. At this moment, Fu Jingma was like many people who would recall the past before they died. He slowly recalled the past. He thought of his mother holding his hand as they walked into the huge house. He thought of the little Fu Jingxian standing at the staircase, looking at him as if he was a piece of trash. It was a pity that in this lifetime, he had never won against Fu Jingxian. In terms of career, love, and in the end he even lost his life, he was really indignant. Why did God always favor Fu Jingxian? Since he was young, he was an illegitimate child who could not see the light of day. Every month he relied on his father's charity to survive. Fu Jingxian was the eldest son of the Fu family. He had a luxurious car, a mansion, and an endless amount of pocket money. Later, when he entered the Fu family, he thought that he would be able to see Fu Jingxian's angry and sad face. He thought that he could be on equal footing with Fu Jingxian. However, Fu Jingxian was very capable and quickly gained the approval of the company's directors. He took control of the company, while he could only train in his subordinate company. Later, when the apocalypse came, he saw Fu Jingxian fall into a group of zombies with his own eyes. He thought that the trauma that Fu Jingxian brought to him would be over. However, he did not expect that he would come back with power in Xiaoqing. Chapter 703. Such a beautiful Xiaoqing. Why did she have to like Fu Jingxian? He had lost again and again. He really couldn't accept it. Fu Jingma panted heavily for a moment. Actually, he was already tired of living like this, neither human nor ghost. However, even if he were to die, he wanted to take them with him. Yinhua was about to make a move when he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. He looked at Fu Jingma abruptly, and then went to pull Yinyi with a pale face. Yinyi subconsciously flung his hand away. Then there was a violent explosion. The filthy blood mixed with the pieces of the corpse suddenly exploded. Yinhua quickly pounced over and pressed Yinyi under his body. Fu Jingxian did the same. He hugged Xiaoqing tightly and protected her under his body as they rolled under the cabinet. When the explosion happened, the expressions of the people waiting outside changed, especially Mulin. She clutched the leaves of the daughter so tightly that she almost tore the daughter apart. But she couldn't move and didn't dare to move because the little bun was still inside. If the little bun was hurt because of them, no one wanted to see that. At this moment the flower jumped out. When it saw Mulin, it opened its flower head and spat out little bun. Mulin hurriedly caught little bun. Then he was excited and pleasantly surprised. "Everyone follow me." When the smoke dissipated, Xiaoqing was still a little dazed because the explosion just now was so loud that she couldn't hear anything. After recovering slightly, Xiaoqing's expression changed. She turned over and hugged Fu Jingxian. They had hidden in a good place. It happened to be under the alloy cabinet used for the experiment. The cabinet was the first to be hit, so when the aftershock of the explosion landed on Fu Jingxian, it had already weakened a lot. Otherwise, Fu Jingxian would definitely have been smashed into pieces. But even so, there was no flesh on Fu Jingxian's back. There were only white bones left, and some of the bones were even broken. Xiaoqing hugged Fu Jingxian in fear. If Fu Jingxian wasn't a zombie, such serious injuries would have been enough to kill him several times. She had underestimated Fu Jingma and wasn't vigilant enough, resulting in everything that had happened. The two of them were in a better position. At least they had a cabinet to block the blast. Yinhua, on the other hand, had his back completely exposed. His body had almost been blasted into two pieces. Many parts of his body were beyond recognition. However, Yinyi, who was in his arms, was in one piece. Not a single hair was missing. Because of this, the school wanted us to drop out of school. Their parents wanted you to pay for their medical fees. Behind my back, you kowtowed to the principal and said that it was fine if you dropped out of school because you had the strength and could still go out to work. But I couldn't. Other than studying, I had no other way out. You apologized to those parents and apologized to them. You went to school during the day and picked up trash at night to collect money to pay for their medical fees. Every day, you ate steamed buns and drank cold water. You also remembered to use the remaining money to buy some meat back and chop it into minced meat to make soup for me. Brother, you dote on me the most, right? Brother, don't scold me. I won't dare to do it again. Brother, I came home. The house is still good. I originally wanted to go back after finding you. We have a small vegetable garden at home. We can plant some things, and it will be enough for us to eat. Chapter 704. Brother, I just want you to live well in this lifetime. I want you to live better than anyone else. I want you to never have to bow down to anyone again. Brother, look at me again. Look at me again. He lay on Inya's body and cried like a child. His tears were wet and flowed down Inya's neck. Inya recalled the time when he was very young. When he came back from a fight outside, Inhua would cry as he applied medicine for him. The two of them were unwanted children. One of them was born without a conjunctiva in his left eye, and the other without legs. The two of them grew up relying on each other. How did they end up like this? Inyi touched Inhua's face. His face was covered in blood and looked very scary. Inhua grabbed Inya's hand and said, Brother, I don't want to die. I want to go home with you. I don't want to die. Don't hate me. Brother. As he cried, a black liquid slowly gathered and formed a catheter-like existence that was inserted into his body. Then a strange liquid was filled in. Inyi, who was still recalling the past, suddenly grabbed Inhua and tried to pull out the catheter. You've already saved it. Don't make mistakes again. But the catheter seemed to grow in his body. He couldn't pull it out no matter how hard he tried. Inhua hugged Inyi tightly and said, Brother, I really don't want to die. I'll be immortal soon. I'll protect you in the future, okay? Brother, don't be afraid. Even if I have to kill everyone, I definitely won't hurt you. Inyi wanted to get up, but he was restrained by Inhua. His strength was inexplicably great, so Inyi couldn't break free for a moment. Inyi had no choice but to use his tentacles to smash the floor below, and then use all his strength to break free. Inhua couldn't move. His eyes were red. Brother, you're leaving me too. Brother, don't you want me anymore? Brother, come back. Don't go. After Inyi broke free, he realized that Inhua's body was completely wrapped in a black mass. And the source of this black mass was the thing that Xiaoqing saw previously. It was the black worm at the bottom of the underground city. The black bug was becoming smaller and smaller. It had completely melted and turned into a black liquid that was slowly absorbed by Inhua. Although Inhua had problems with his legs, he was a very smart child. Moreover, he had an absolute brother complex. After he graduated from high school, he did not continue to go to school. All of his knowledge was self-taught. Because of his profession, Inyi had left many similar books at home. He relied on these books, and some that he bought later to enrich himself. After the apocalypse, he was lucky enough to awaken a very special ability. It was similar to the evolution of his body, but only his brain had evolved. In other words, his brain was highly developed, and his IQ far exceeded that of ordinary people. However, his body was still very weak. In a desperate situation, he found this big black bug. He then found that the energy in its body was very special. It could make the cells split at an extremely fast speed. In other words, a little bit of its energy could make a person's limbs grow back. Even if you were cut in half at the waist, as long as you were still breathing, you would be able to regrow your lower body. Of course, if the brain was damaged, there was no other way. Moreover, this big black bug was not dead. It was in a special dormant state, and could still communicate with Inhua. Many of Inhua's ideas were developed by it. Inhua was very excited. He had never been recognized by anyone other than his brother. The big bug was the first other than his brother. Chapter 705. However, when the big bug suggested to merge with him, he rejected it. Other than his brother, he didn't trust anyone else completely. Even though the big bug told him about its current condition honestly, he couldn't trust it completely. The big bug's body was already damaged, so it didn't enter hibernation to preserve its life. On the other hand, Yinhua's brain was extremely developed. He had the ability to control energy, but he didn't have this energy. The two of them hit it off immediately. All of Yinhua's experiments were carried out with the help of the big bug, including Fujingma. Fujingma was the host body that Yinhua found for the big bug. Unfortunately, it was destroyed before it matured. We have to stop him. Yinyi was extremely anxious. That thing looks weird, but I feel that it's extremely dangerous. I can't be sure what will happen after the two of them merge, but it definitely won't be anything good. Big brother, there's no way to interrupt it. Just wait for me. Yinhua smiled and slowly stretched his body. After the black liquid continuously fused into his body, a red light slowly appeared in his eyes. Yinyi smiled happily. I will live forever, brother. You will too. Do you want to merge with me? That way we won't be separated forever. The red light in his eyes became darker and darker. He looked more and more evil. Everyone knew that they couldn't let him continue like this, because before the fusion was complete, his aura was infinitely close to that of a level 9. Xiaoqing helped Fu Jingxin to the corner of the wall and let him sit down. Then she rushed forward. Her eyes were cold. Little Blossom floated behind her. Countless tentacles forcefully pierced into the black liquid. Little Blossom opened its petals with difficulty. The liquid was absorbed by Little Blossom. After absorbing the black liquid, it went through purification. The purest energy was extracted and injected into Xiaoqing's body. Then it was absorbed by Xiaoqing. Impossible! How can you steal my energy? Yinhua was shocked. The red in his eyes was so dense that it was almost solid. His aura didn't increase anymore. Instead, it seemed to be decreasing. He was a little anxious. He raised his hand, and a large amount of liquid was injected into his body. Although some of it was still taken by Little Blossom, his aura had truly reached level 9. The black liquid kept transforming his body. Then, black patterns slowly appeared on the surface of his body. The patterns looked very evil and mysterious. From bottom to top they reached Yinhua's neck. Xiaoqing's aura kept increasing. With the help of the power provided by the big bug, she actually broke through to level 9 in an instant. After breaking through to level 9, Xiaoqing realized that her previous feelings were wrong. The difference between level 9 and level 8 was not just one level. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. The feeling of having power in her hands gave her the illusion that she could move mountains and seas. The gap between level 8 and level 9 was like a ravine that couldn't be bridged. Although she was only level 1, Xiaoqing felt that she could take on dozens of her previous self. She could even play with Fujingma. That kind of fake level 9 was indeed only a little stronger than level 8. That was why she felt that level 9 wasn't that strong. Xiaoqing opened her eyes and clenched her fists. When she looked at Yinhua again, her eyes were full of caution. She had only absorbed a part of the energy and broken through to level 9. What about Yinhua, who had absorbed most of the energy? His strength had already surpassed level 9 and reached an even higher level. Yinhua was a little crazy now. He kept yelling, "Impossible! How can you steal my energy? This is impossible." His face was now covered with black patterns. The patterns extended from his cheeks to his forehead. Then, they formed a black pattern in the shape of an eye on his forehead. It looked exceptionally ugly and evil. The current Yinhua no longer had that gentle and delicate appearance. Even Yinyi felt that he was a little unfamiliar. Yinyi looked at Yinhua with tears in his eyes. After a long while he said, "This isn't Yinhua. He's not my brother." Chapter 706. He and Yinhua had depended on each other for more than 20 years. No matter how much Yinhua had changed, he could still recognize him. However, the person in front of him was not Yinhua, nor was he his younger brother. He would never be wrong. Xiaoqing was calmer than anyone else. She said calmly, "No matter what, we have to fight. Yinyi, go take care of Jingxin. Leave the rest to me." Yinyi knew that Xiaoqing didn't want him to face his younger brother. However, the person in front of him was no longer his younger brother. "No need, Qing. I'm not saying that I'm cutting ties with him. He's no longer my younger brother. It's probably like a body takeover in novels. There's a different person in his body," Yinyi said calmly. Although he was extremely disappointed and angry at the things that Yin Hua had done, and had thought of severing their relationship, and had even thought of killing him, the person before him was, after all, his younger brother. They had depended on each other for many years, and their relationship was very deep. How could they just let it go? Especially when he saw that his younger brother's body had been taken over by someone else. He was very sad. However, he wouldn't be soft-hearted because of this. I'll end his life with my own hands. He's my younger brother. Even if he dies, he should die with dignity, Yin Yi said softly. Then do it. Xiaoqing looked at Yin Hua and said, if I die here today, please take Fu Jingxin and leave. Similarly, if you die here, I'll take your body and leave. Xiaoqing smiled. If I die, I'll be very unwilling. After all, good days are coming. So try your best to live. Yin Yi smiled. He didn't have any regrets. His only regret was that his only younger brother had become like this in the end. He had once thought that he could watch his younger brother get married and have children. Even in the apocalypse, he could live a carefree life. Now it seemed that he couldn't. Yin Hua's scarlet eyes were aimed at Xiaoqing. Before the two of them could make a move, he had already made the first move. His speed was extremely fast, and he fiercely collided with Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing felt as if she had been hit by a speeding train. She was sent flying. Even though she had a strong body of a level 9, she felt as if her bones were about to fall apart. Yin Yi also made his move. He quickly rushed towards Yin Hua. The tentacles on his body hit the ground, bringing a huge momentum, causing him to crash into Yin Hua at a very fast speed. Yin Hua sneered and extended his hand towards Yin Yi. However, his hand stopped halfway, as if Yin Hua's body was still instinctively unwilling to hurt Yin Yi. This instinct was very strong. He had just taken control of Yin Hua's body, so he couldn't go against this instinct. He could only look at Yin Yi with hatred and avoid him. After that, he didn't take the initiative to attack Yin Yi. He made Xiaoqing his target. It was Xiaoqing's first time encountering an opponent who used pure brute force. He was similar to Gu Panpan. However, Yin Hua's strength was very strong. His skin was covered with runes, so it was terrifyingly tough. It was hard to break through his defense with full force. Compared to him, Fu Jingma was a piece of cake. This fight was indeed about technique. However, when one's strength reached a certain level, it would be able to break through everything with brute force. There were no other tricks. Xiaoqing had many mutated plants, but none of them could break through Yin Hua's defense. The only thing that could break through his defense was the spatial ability. This fight was really painful. It was like fighting with an iron bucket with your bare hands. Although you could leave scratches on the surface of the iron bucket, it was useless and your hands would be injured. Chapter 707. Xiaoqing felt extremely aggrieved. She had never fought such an aggrieved fight before. Yin Hua was probably very aggrieved too. He could avoid getting hurt, but he couldn't kill Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was a meticulous person. The more she fought, the more she felt that something was wrong. His strength seems to be increasing. Yin Yi was the most aggrieved one. He wasn't as fast as Yin Hua, so he kept eating dirt behind him. He couldn't hit Yin Hua or help Xiaoqing, so he was just a decoration. I think it might be because he has just taken over this body and hasn't been able to fully integrate his strength. As he fights, his strength fuses with his current body. That's why we feel that his strength is increasing, Yin Yi said calmly. If that's the case, we have to finish him off as soon as possible. We have no way of knowing how strong he is in the end. Xiaoqing smiled. What if he kills us in an instant? But it's hard to even break through his defense. How are we going to kill him? Yin Yi said helplessly. Looking at the current situation, it's very difficult. Xiaoqing smiled bitterly. But we can give it a try. Yin Yi, can you delay him for a while? Yin Yi nodded. I'm slower than him. I can only delay him as much as I can. I might not be able to delay him for too long. Just a while. Xiaoqing was also helpless. After she broke through to level 9, she had a new understanding of space. But she didn't have time to digest it. Actually, Xiaoqing didn't know either. They could only take one step at a time to see if they could kill Yin Hua. After Yin Yi used his tentacles to replace his legs, he was much faster. He could barely keep up with Yinhua's speed and forcefully hold him back. This was also because Yinhua didn't attack him instinctively, but as Yinhua slowly took over this body, even his instincts were being suppressed bit by bit. If this continued, he would kill Yinyi sooner or later. Xiaoqing felt it very seriously. Not only could space be torn apart, it could also be superimposed and overlapped. It could even banish people to other dimensions or affect time. Of course, Xiaoqing didn't have any of these abilities. The only thing she could do now was to tear open a spatial rift and pass through it. As for that ability, it was indeed very useful at the moment. However, when it came to dealing with Yinhua, it was somewhat lacking. She carefully tried to figure out a new way to use her spatial ability, which could be considered as a last-minute effort. Not only did Yinyi have to stall Yinhua, but he also had to ensure that Xiaoqing wouldn't be attacked. This was the most important thing, so he was having a hard time. Xiaoqing deduced many things from one instance. From the moment the space was torn apart, she thought that if the space in two places overlapped, the huge force produced would be even more terrifying than the space being torn apart. She decided to give it a try. She raised her hand and slowly began to manipulate space. Now that she had reached level 9, her ability to manipulate space had improved. She was able to manipulate space more skillfully. She slowly superimposed the two layers of space together. There would be a huge friction between the two spaces. When they overlapped, there would be countless tiny space cracks, just like little snakes. These were all created because they couldn't withstand the overlapping of space. When the last two layers of space overlapped, there were layers of lightning-like cracks in the middle. The layers of cracks all overlapped together, looking like a ball of black lightning. Even when light shone on it, it seemed to be swallowed up. Xiaoqing was a little surprised. She pulled back her hand in time. The space that was no longer under her control suddenly exploded. The shock wave from the explosion sent Yinyi and Yinhua flying. Seeing this, Xiaoqing immediately stretched out her hand and overlapped the space around Yinhua. Yinhua's expression immediately changed. He tried to retreat, but his front, back, left, right, and even up and down were all overlapped. There was no way to retreat. Xiaoqing saw the ball of black lightning appear again with her own eyes. It was like a small black hole. Yinhua's scalp went numb. He held his hands in front of him, but they were quickly crushed. His tough body was like a ball of soft tofu in front of this ball of black lightning. He couldn't withstand a single blow. This was the first time he felt the threat of death. He really didn't want to die. He had just obtained freedom. How could he bear to die like this? Yinhua roared angrily. The black patterns on his body rippled, as though they were alive. Those black lines instantly retreated from his neck to his lower body. Then he directly abandoned his lower body. His lower body suddenly exploded, forming a huge shockwave. From the outside, it looked like a bomb had exploded in a glass bottle. It was very spectacular. After the glass bottle received the violent shockwave, it also exploded. The entire underground city collapsed because of this explosion. Fortunately, this underground city wasn't built with tofu. Otherwise, Xiaoqing and the rest would have been buried alive. The smoke and dust slowly dispersed. Yinhua crawled out from a pile of messy things. His lower body regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The way the granulation was slowly growing out of the fracture was truly terrifying. By the time Xiaoqing realized what was happening, he was back to the perfect Yinhua. Xiaoqing stared blankly for a while. Then she patted her own head. How could I forget about this? Fu Jingma could regrow his limbs, let alone Yinhua. According to this situation, the next attack must be aimed at Yinhua's vital points, such as his head. If his head was crushed, he could still be revived. Then there would be no end to it. However, Yinhua wasn't prepared to give Xiaoqing a second chance to prepare. He coldly bared his teeth and spread out his arms. A circle of black ripples rippled out. When the ripples reached Xiaoqing, she felt as though she was pressed down by a 10,000-pound rock. She couldn't move at all. That invisible gravity made it impossible for her to even lift her arms, let alone fight back. Yinhua laughed and said, "This is the absolute difference in strength. Your little tricks can't make up for it." Xiaoqing raised her head with difficulty. She seemed to understand something. Comprehension. It was said that when one reached the 9th level, one could comprehend their own territory. In the territory, one's strength would increase infinitely. She had just reached the 9th level and hadn't comprehended her own territory. That's right. Yinhua walked over. Before you die, I'll let you know. This is my gravity territory. Chapter 708. The gravity in the gravity field was not equal. It was based on the strength of the person in the gravity field. Xiaoqing was a level 9 paranormal. The gravity exerted on her was enough to crush Yinye's bones. However, the gravity exerted on Yinye's body was aimed at level 8 paranormal. Xiaoqing tried to stand up, but the gravity was too heavy. When she straightened her back, she could hear her bones groaning miserably. Yinhua walked to Xiaoqing step by step, then laughed in a hoarse voice. Your body is much better than the one I'm using now. To be honest, I was going to kill you, but now I've changed my mind. I'm going to turn you into my puppet. When I'm tired of using this body, I can switch to yours. Xiaoqing did not give up struggling. She stood up with difficulty. Her bones were almost deformed because of the gravity. The black patterns on Yinye's body formed several small black tentacles, reaching for Xiaoqing. At that moment, Yinye suddenly roared and pounced on Yinhua from behind. He didn't know what method he used to escape from this gravitational force, but the surface of his skin was oozing drops of blood. Yinhua was being carried and rolled out along with Yinye. They hit the corner of the wall, and the gravitational field became unstable for a moment. Taking advantage of this moment of instability, Xiaoqing successfully broke out. After rolling on the ground for a while, Yinhua angrily scolded, "Get lost!" Then he broke free and threw Yinye against the wall. Then, he collided with Xiaoqing, who had jumped up. Both of their bones made cracking sounds. Yinhua was pushed against the wall. Her chest caved in, and she looked like a lump of soft mud. Xiaoqing's condition was slightly better, but half of the bones in her arm were completely shattered. After sending Xiaoqing flying, Yinhua's chest expanded and quickly returned to its original shape. He lifted Yinye, who was very close to him, and said with a ferocious face, "Do you really think I can't kill you?" After Xiaoqing landed, she rushed out like a cannonball and knocked Yinhua away again. This time, she saved Yinye. Yinye fell to the ground, panting violently. Then he saw Xiaoqing and Yinhua rolling together. The black liquid and the power of space collided again and again. Xiaoqing did not give him a chance to open a new domain. However, the difference in strength was obvious. In the end, Xiaoqing's left shoulder was crushed by Yinhua, and his chest was pierced by the space blade. However, Yinhua was not afraid of being injured at all. He used a black tentacle to pin Xiaoqing to the ground and sneered, "I can't bear to hurt this body of mine again, so you can die quietly. Leaving this body to me is your greatest contribution." The moment he attacked Yinye, who no longer had any strength left, rolled and threw himself forward. Then countless tentacles pierced through his body. His eyes were red. Even at this point, he still hugged Yinhua tightly. "Get out of my brother's body!" Xiaoqing threw herself forward weakly. She held a space blade formed by the weak power of space in her hand. When she stabbed it, she aimed it at Yinhua's chest. However, in that instant, the red in Yinhua's eyes faded a lot. He raised his head and used his forehead to receive the space blade. The moment the space blade stabbed in, a ball of black light screamed and was annihilated. Drops of red flowed down from Yinhua's forehead into his eyes and dripped down from the corners of his eyes. He had always been a meticulous person. How could he not leave a backup plan for himself? His backup plan was related to Yinye. Chapter 709. Many years ago, Yinhua said, "Brother, wait for me to grow up. When I grow up, no one will be able to hurt you, unless they step over my dead body." Now he really did it. Yinhua's tears mixed with blood flowed all over her face. "Brother, I don't want to die. If I die, what will you do? You're so stupid. You can't even do basic housework. You can even hurt your fingers when cutting vegetables. I haven't even seen a girl who is willing to marry you and take care of you in the future. How can I rest assured and die? If I die, will you be sad? Will you miss me? Brother, I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid that I won't be able to see you again. Inhua held Inye's hand tightly and couldn't say another word. He was so worried, so worried. Inye trembled and held Inhua's hand. When the person in his arms slowly stopped breathing, he cried out loud. In this life, he didn't let anyone down, but he let Inhua down. At that time, because of work, he couldn't go home once in 10 days or half a month. Even if he went home, he would only stay for a day at most, sometimes even half a day. There was no one at home, only a part-time worker who would come to clean the room regularly. Inhua was originally a very cheerful child, but later on, she became more and more silent and isolated. If he cared more about Inhua, would it lead to the tragedy later on? His mind was filled with money, money, money. He wanted to earn more money to give Inhua a better life. He wanted them to not have to worry about basic necessities anymore. He wanted to save enough money to spend for the rest of his life. But his brother was gone. What was the use of money? He said, Xiaohua, I'll be your leg in the future. He said, Xiaohua, I'll be with you forever. He said, Xiaohua, when I earn enough money, we'll go to the seaside and buy a villa facing the sea. When I wake up every day, I'll be able to see the boundless sea. He said, Xiaohua, my biggest wish in my life is that you can live happily. He didn't fulfill all the promises he made. When Inhua died, he couldn't even close his eyes. He knew what Inhua was worried about. She was worried that he was still angry, worried that no one would take care of him in the future, worried that he would forget about his brother. Who said that zombies didn't have tears? Why was his face so wet? Inye hugged Inhua tightly and wiped away the blood and tears on his face. His face was still so young, like a child who didn't know anything about the world. He did do a lot of bad things, a lot of stupid things, which made Inye so angry that he wanted to cut off all ties with him. But they had depended on each other for more than 20 years. In such a cold winter, the two of them hid under the overpass. They only had cotton clothes to wrap around the two of them. They used their body heat to warm each other up. They crawled out from the snow and the brink of death. They had walked through the darkest and most bitter days together. They weren't blood brothers, but they were closer than blood brothers. Actually, Inhua wasn't a bad person. He was just too paranoid, which was why he did such a crazy thing. Inye was so regretful that his heart was about to break. He hugged Inhua's corpse and cried until he collapsed. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Until Mu Lin and the others came in, Inye was still holding Inhua in a daze, unwilling to let go. The injuries on his body were too serious. Even with the body of a zombie, he could not bear it. Mu Lin advised him in a low voice, Brother Yi, let's go out first. We'll contact the people in the capital later. They'll blow this place up directly. Inye was in a daze. Only then did he wake up a little. He murmured, Xiaohua, close your eyes. Brother will take you home. Inhua's blood-red eyes slowly closed. He had been an obedient child since he was young. How could he bear to let his beloved brother worry and feel guilty? Inye hugged Inhua's corpse tightly and left the underground city. Others wanted to help him, but he refused to let go. He just hugged it tightly. When he was carried to the hospital for treatment, he hugged it too. Xiaoqing carried Fu Jingxin on her back and stood outside. She saw with her own eyes that a bomb had landed and blown the underground city to smithereens. Everything that happened was buried underground. No one would know what had happened back then. Except for her, Fu Jingxin, and Inye. Let's go back. Xiaoqing inexplicably felt relieved. No matter what, everything was over. When the sun rose again, it would be a brand new day, and a brand new future. Jiangqing would get better and better. They would all get better and better. After leaving S City, they did not go back immediately. Instead, they rested for a while. After all, the injuries of the wounded were very serious, especially the little bun's condition. The journey back was bumpy. If something happened, they would have no one to cry to. Xiaoqing's injuries were slightly lighter. When Fu Jingxin was still receiving treatment, she was already able to walk. Xiaoqing went to Inye's place first. Since that day, Inye's condition had been very strange. He hugged Inhua's corpse and refused to let go. No matter who tried to persuade him, it was useless. Even when he was receiving treatment, he wanted Inhua by his side. His mental state was also strange. Xiaoqing felt very guilty about this. After all, no matter what, one thing could not be changed. That was she killed Yinhua. When Xiaoqing walked into the tent, Yinyi was holding Yinhua in a daze. He sat on the bed with no expression on his face, but he gave off a feeling of extreme grief. "I'm sorry," Xiaoqing said softly as she sat down at the side. Yinyi shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong. If I had the chance, I would have killed Xiaohua personally to free him. I just hate myself. Why didn't I notice Xiaohua's abnormality and let him?" Yinyi said softly. "I've let him down in this life. If I had the chance, I still want to be his brother and treat him well for the rest of my life. I want to make up for everything I owe him in this life. Don't take things too hard." Xiaoqing was very worried. Yinyi smiled. "I won't. The good days are just ahead. Why would I take things too hard? I will live well for Xiaohua's sake. He will definitely be waiting for me in hell." Xiaoqing sat with Yinyi for a long time. She could feel that Yinyi's condition was much better as he talked. When she walked out of the tent, Yinyi was almost awake. When she returned to her place, all three men were there. Xiaoqing was silent for a moment before she said, "Let's get married." Chapter 710. When they returned to Rivertown, it was already a few days later. Xiaoqing had mixed feelings. Her enemies had all been cleared, and they had also reached an agreement on the human camp. In the future, Jiang City would be like a utopia. They wouldn't interfere with anything, and would be self-sufficient. They would live their own lives. They wouldn't have to fight and kill anymore. No one would interfere with them. It couldn't be any better. After returning, they could get married. These three men had been with her for too long. She had not given them any promises or a sense of security. She had already let them down. She would become their wife, although she could no longer bear children for them. With little Bun, their family of 5 would still lead a good life. However, when they returned to the entrance of Rivertown, Xiaoqing was stunned. At that moment, she even had the urge to kill everyone. Although they had gone to kill Yinhua mainly because of personal grudges, they were also doing it for the sake of humanity. In just one night, a few people were seriously injured, especially Yinyi. His heart was hurt the most. However, when they returned home, they realized that Rivertown was almost in ruins. That was her home. Everyone in there was her family. But now, her home was in ruins and the corpses of her family were lying everywhere. Was this the world that they had sacrificed their lives to protect? Not only Xiaoqing, but the eyes of the others also turned red. They rushed into Rivertown crazily, and realized that Xiao Tong had been forced into a corner. She tried her best to hold up a mental strength shield to protect the remaining elderly, women, and children behind her. The clothes in front of her chest were covered in blood. It was bloody and looked very glaring. And the people who had led the attack on Xiao Tong were all familiar. Most of them were from the 12-base alliance. There were also some that she did not recognize. Xiaoqing was heartbroken. Her eyes were red. She was injured, but she was still the first to rush into the crowd. She did not hold back her level 9 strength. Cracks in the space surrounded her. Everything that she touched exploded into a rain of blood in an instant. It could be said that the 12 Bases Alliance had mobilized all their forces this time. As for Rivertown, most of their forces had been deployed to deal with Yinhua. Their base was empty, which was why they had been attacked. Xiaoqing was now extremely regretful. If she had known earlier, she would have stayed behind to guard her home. She had never thought that when she led people to charge at the front, someone would cut off her path from behind. As expected, those who were not of the same race would have different intentions. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she was possessed. At this moment, she really wanted to kill all the living people in Jiang City. That way no one would hurt her people anymore. The 12 Bases Alliance was scared out of their wits. They ran even faster than they came. They came to attack Jiang City, because they knew that Xiaoqing and the others were not in Jiang City. It could only be said that many people were judging others by their own standards. They were worried that after Xiaoqing killed Yinhua, she would turn around and target them. Therefore, they took this opportunity to come over and wipe out Jiang City. Who would have thought Xiaoqing and the others actually came back. The motley crew immediately ran away. They didn't even put up a fight. Xiaoqing immediately led people to chase after them. She left some people behind to protect Xiao Tong and the others. The moment she went out, she saw that the motley crew had been intercepted. The people who intercepted the motley crew looked familiar. The one at the front was Abe Shirzhua. Behind him was Full Moon Whitewater. Chapter 711. Xiaoqing led her men and charged forward. She looked really terrifying because wherever she passed, there would be a rain of blood. Those who were killed by her did not even have any limbs left. At most, there would only be some flesh and blood dripping on the ground. After being attacked from both sides, except for a few people who managed to escape, the rest of the people from the 12 Bases Alliance were killed forever. However, the redness in Xiaoqing's eyes didn't fade. She raised her head and saw the people from the capital city rushing over at the fastest speed. The leader was the boss of the capital city. He was already old, but he was still panting. We rushed over as soon as we received the news. We didn't expect to be late. I'm really sorry. Xiaoqing raised her hand subconsciously and was about to kill someone. Then Yin Qiyu hugged her. Ah Qing, calm down. Xiaoqing's body was trembling. After a long time, she pointed at Jiang City and said, "Do you see that? That's my home. Those lying on the ground are my family. Back then, you came to beg me to deal with Yin Hua and the rest. Now, it's also you who are doing this to me." Her eyes were red, and the corners of her eyes looked like they were about to split. You're right. Those who are not of our race must have different intentions. Their intentions must be different. Mayor Xiao. The old man smiled bitterly. We really didn't notice it in advance, because we were all focused on S City. When we realized it, a few days had passed. Then we quickly sent people over. He was very sincere. Mayor Xiao, this is indeed our fault. We will compensate for all the losses. When we go back, we will announce the operation to completely destroy the 12 Bases Alliance. We will definitely give you an explanation. Fuck the compensation. Fuck the explanation. Can the dead come back to life? Xiaoqing clenched her fists and resisted the urge to kill. Then she said, "Get out now. From now on, anyone who steps into the territory of Jiang City will be killed without mercy." The old man wanted to say something, but Yin Qiyu had already waved her hand and sent people out to push them all out. He knew that this was Xiaoqing's bottom line. She couldn't hold it in any longer. If she saw these people again, she would go crazy. After the people from the capital left, Moongazer Whitewater walked over. It had been a long time since they last met. He looked a little chubbier than before. At least there was some meat on his face. He said softly, "Master, you don't have to be sad. If you really can't do it, come with me. We'll go back to Japan. You're my master forever. I've already completely controlled that place. No one will dare to disrespect you." Xiaoqing closed her eyes and calmed down a little after a long time. Her voice was hoarse as she said, "My emotions are not stable right now. I'm afraid I can't entertain you. Qiyu, bring them back and settle them down properly." Then Xiaoqing walked towards Jiang City. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, the death of ordinary people didn't matter, because they didn't have any combat power. To a base, they were like a burden. However, to Xiaoqing, everyone in Jiang City was like her family. Everyone here trusted her from the bottom of their hearts. Whether it was a mutant, an ordinary person, or even the old, weak, sick, or disabled, they were all sincere to her. They really treated Jiang City as their home. If Jiang City was a big family, then she was the head of the family. If anyone was hurt, she would be sad. But now, those who used to look at her with trust and respect were lying on the ground. They would never open their eyes to look at her again. They would never bring her nourishing soup when she was working. Those old people loved her as if she was their own daughter. Every time little Bun went out, she would come back with a big bag of things. They were all carefully made snacks for the mother and daughter to pass the time. This was Jiang City. Everyone warmed her heart. "Mayor, Miss Xiaotong is seriously injured. Please go and have a look." A paranormal who was clearly 1.8 meters tall was crying so hard that his eyes were red. When Xiaoqing went over, there were many people around the door. They were all looking at the door with concern. After hearing that Jiang City was forced to leave, Xiao Tong held on for a day and a night. Not only did she overdraw her power, but her internal organs were also almost exhausted. Xiao Qing sat in front of the bed. Her tears flowed down slowly. It wasn't that zombies didn't have tears. It was just that they weren't sad enough. She held Xiao Tong's hand quietly and sat there for a long time. Then she said in a hoarse voice, "Do as I said before. From today onwards, set up sentries in Jiang City. Set up a sign every 50 meters. It's forbidden to enter by mistake. Violators will be killed without mercy." In this world, she only cared about Jiang City. In the future, no one would have the chance to hurt Jiang City. That night, Xiao Qing presided over a grand funeral. After cremation, all the corpses were buried in the cemetery of Jiang City. They counted the number of casualties and found that there were nearly 1,000 casualties. At that time, Jiang City didn't have any fighting power. Even the old, weak, sick, and disabled took hoes and shovels to fight against the enemy. Those were the old, the children, or the disabled who had no fighting power. They went to the battlefield and never had the chance to go down again. After that, the number of ordinary people in Jiang City decreased by nearly a third. After presiding over the funeral, Xiao Qing was in a very cold state. She could sit there quietly for half a day. Even Yan Qiyue and the others couldn't do anything about it. Full Moon Whitewater was very obedient. It didn't bother them and stayed in Jiang City. Every day, it brought people to help repair Jiang City. On the fourth day, Xiao Qing sat on the balcony. She just couldn't figure it out and was still stuck in her own emotions. At this moment, Yan Qiyue ran downstairs with a child in her arms. Her forehead was covered in sweat. "Ah Qing, look. The baby was probably just born. His skin was slightly red and wrinkled. He looked like a little monkey. He was crying loudly. This was the first baby born after the end of the world." Xiao Qing's eyes were moist. Yes, the darkness was over. They had welcomed the dawn. No matter how many people had sacrificed, they had exchanged for a better tomorrow for Jiang City. She walked down the stairs and hugged the baby. She said softly, "I've made you worry these days. I'm fine." Those who were eavesdropping outside the door all cheered. Xiao Qing was their sky. If the sky collapsed, Jiang City would have no future. "Is his name Qinxi okay?" "The first light of dawn," Xiao Qing said softly. "Just like the new students of Jiang City." Chapter 7:12. Mulin looked at the sky. It was already dark, so she prepared to tidy up a place to sleep. The little bun moved his butt carefully and smiled fawningly. "Godmother, let me help you." "Go away, you little brat. You even learned to run away from home?" Mulin rolled her eyes. She really wanted to grab the little bun's ear and smack his butt. However, although she was angry, she couldn't bear to do it. She could only turn her back and not look at the little bun to prevent herself from being angered. The little bun went over to her and massaged her shoulders. Godmother, I know I'm wrong. I just wanted to go out and play. My mommy won't let me out. Do you think there's anything fun outside? Your mommy doesn't lack enemies in her life. You ran out alone. She's so worried. Come back with me now." Mulin snorted and said. The little bun immediately pouted and acted pitiful. "Godmother, I'm not a kid anymore. But I haven't come out to play before. I want to see the outside world. I don't want to be cooped up in Rivertown all day." Mulin thought about it and agreed. He was a kid. It was only right for him to come out and see the world. He would be sick if he was cooped up all day. However, she was very angry that the little bun ran out alone. She was prepared to ignore the little bun. The little bun tried all sorts of fawning, bribery, and cuteness. In the end, Mulin had no choice. She said, "I'll bring you around, but you can't run around alone. You have to follow me closely." The little bun nodded repeatedly and said, "I definitely won't run around. I'll let your mommy know and bring you out to play. We'll go home after 2 days." Mulin stroked the little bun's head and said gently, "Little Xiao, do you think you're very powerful and we're making a fuss over nothing?" The little bun shook his head honestly. "I do think I'm very powerful, but I also know that there's always someone better than you. Mommy will be worried about me." As he spoke, He became a little worried. Is mommy angry? I didn't think much at that time. I just wanted to come out and take a look. Mulin purposely scared him. When your mommy heard that you ran out alone, she almost fainted and scared your 3 dads. Then, Yin Chiwa checked and found out that your mommy was pregnant. The little bun jumped up immediately. Little baby, is that your little sister? We still don't know if it's a boy or a girl. Mulin snickered. Otherwise, I wouldn't be the one coming out to look for you. Now, your mother is being worshipped by your 3 fathers like she's their ancestor. They won't even let her out of the door. Little Bun immediately said, Why don't we go home? I want to see my sister. There's still a long time before the baby is born. Why are you in such a hurry? I'll take you out for a walk to relax. When you come home, mommy's belly will be big. Mulin patted his head and said, I'll go set up the tent. You go and pick some mushrooms and wild vegetables. We'll cook some soup. Little Bun nodded and went to pick mushrooms and wild vegetables. After a while, Little Bun ran back. Mulin had already set up the tent. The 2 of them cooked some wild vegetable soup. After eating their fill, they went to sleep. The next morning they set off. Ever since Jiang City was attacked, Xiaoqing was especially angry. She set up a forbidden zone around Jiang City. Other than her friends, and those who were recognized by her would receive a pass from Xiaoqing. The others who dared to enter Jiang City would be killed without mercy. Chapter 713. Jingdu quickly spread the news and listed Jiang City as a forbidden area. No one was allowed to enter. This was because the people in the capital knew that Xiaoqing was really infuriated. After all, Xiaoqing had risked her life for the sake of humanity. However, some brainless people had attacked Jiang City and killed many people. They believed that Xiaoqing was not joking. If anyone dared to enter Jiang City's territory, they would not be able to come out alive. Although some people thought that they were strong and brave, they sneaked into Jiang City's territory. In the end, they were thrown out as corpses. Xiaoqing didn't care whether they were innocent or not. She only knew that she had put up a no-entry sign at the border and spread the news. Those who violated the rules would receive the same treatment as the enemies of Jiang City. Those who trespassed into private houses and were killed could only admit that they were unlucky. Jiang City was her home. Those who trespassed should leave their heads behind. Because no one dared to enter Jiang City became more and more mysterious. The rumors became more and more exaggerated. However, there were 2 kinds of rumors. One was that the people living in Jiang City were zombies. They were not human beings. They were more xenophobic. Anyone who entered Jiang City would be treated as an outsider and killed. There were also some who said that the person who lived in Jiang City was like a savior. However, the person who had saved many people was hurt by the person he had saved. In a fit of anger, he brought his family and friends to build a paradise that belonged to him and forbade others from entering. Although there were many rumors, they gradually faded away. Because the apocalypse had entered the later stage, many zombies had evolved to a certain level and recovered their human memories. Then these zombies were divided into 3 states. One was that they found out that they had eaten their family and friends. When they recovered their memories, they collapsed and chose to commit suicide to end their lives. Another one was that they couldn't accept it after they had eaten people. However, they still had their family and friends alive. For their family, they would continue to live and protect mankind. This kind of zombies would restrain the low-level zombies and prevent them from harming humans. There was another kind that was the most terrifying. After they found out that they had eaten humans, they were not afraid or regretted it. Instead, they were ecstatic because they had gained power. They would even continue to prey on humans and ability users in order to gain more power. Therefore, the current human world was still very chaotic. After reaching a certain level, zombies would awaken their memories, and their appearances would be no different from humans. Those zombies who hunted humans had once caused a lot of panic among humans. Fortunately, someone later invented a kind of drug that didn't have any side effects after humans took it, including paranormals. After zombies took it, they would have a special reaction, and their flesh would start to rot in an instant. Everyone who tried to enter the base and return from the outside had to take the medicine and be observed for a certain period of time before they were allowed to enter the base. The invention of the drug made the base a relatively safe place for the time being. Even if some zombies wanted to hunt humans, they could only do so outside the base. However, it was impossible for humans to stay in the base forever. They needed food and all kinds of resources. They still had to search for them outside the base. But now, all the bases were trying to cultivate all kinds of plants. Just like Jiang City, they had set up a cultivation base in their own base. According to this development, sooner or later, humans would be able to achieve self-sufficiency. They would no longer have to worry about starvation. However, the search teams that went out to look for resources and suitable places for cultivation bases were often attacked by zombies. The high-level zombies could command the low-level zombies. In other words, they could launch a small zombie tide. The search teams had to fight against the zombie tide and the high-level zombies. It was very difficult. There were even cases where the whole team was wiped out. The most terrible thing was that the high-level zombies liked the energy in the heads of ability users. They would also hunt ordinary people and feed them to their low-level zombies so that they could evolve. Those zombies who had lost their conscience always thought that they were a new species that was superior to humans. They wanted to rule the whole world. They no longer regarded humans as their own kind, but as their own food. After a short period of chaos, humans slowly organized to resist those zombies. However, the effect was not good. Although they could kill the low-level zombies, it was difficult for them to kill the high-level zombies. The recovery ability of high-level zombies was not as good as Shaoqing and the air dye at home, but it was much stronger than ordinary ability users. It might only take one high-level ability user to defeat a high-level zombie, but it would take many high-level ability users to kill a high-level zombie. However, the high-level zombies were the source of this disaster, which caused this disaster to continue for a long time and still not calm down. Mu Lin and the little bun only knew this after they came into contact with people. Mu Lin sneered and said, "Your mother had expected this. Humans' bad habits are very serious." So when she learned that zombies could recover their memories, she expected this day to come. However, the situation was more serious than she thought. Those idiots still insisted that those who were not of their kind must have a different heart. They would not accept those kind zombies who were willing to help them. It is normal for them to be suppressed like this. The little bun pursed his lips and said, "I am most worried that they will go to my mother. Aren't those people good at going to my mother when they can't beat them?" Mu Lin sneered and said, "It is not called a forbidden area for humans for nothing. Besides, your mother said that she will not intervene. She is pregnant and has no time to care about them. Let them fight. When they find that they have to unite and accept those zombies, they will have the ability to resist. If they don't repent, it will not be a pity even if they die." The little bun nodded. He did not like those people. The younger he was, the more he could feel the hidden emotions of humans. He could feel that those people were afraid of Jiang City. They were vigilant, but they were not friendly. So, why should they be friendly to humans? "We will reach the town soon. We can stop and have a rest." Mu Lin touched the little bun's head. When they just walked from the cement road to the mud road, a person flew over and fell at their feet. Chapter 7:14. The man rolled on the ground a few times. His face was covered in dust, and he looked very embarrassed. He even reached out his hand and shouted, "Sister, take your son and run. There are many zombies behind us." Mu Lin silently stretched out his leg and blocked the man's face, not letting him touch him and the baby. "Can you move a little further away?" The man hugged Mu Lin's leg, looking confused and a little aggrieved. "I'm not dirty." After that, he looked at his dirty palm and silently moved his hand away from Mu Lin's leg. Fortunately, Mu Lin was wearing black shoes, so the man's palm print was not visible. But Mu Lin still wanted to kick the man away. However, the man looked adorable and funny, so Mu Lin did not kick him. The man was in a daze for a while, and then his expression changed. "Go. You won't be able to leave if you don't." Mu Lin looked behind the man and said, "Are you talking about them?" Dense zombies came out of the woods. The man looked back and saw those zombies. He was very dispirited. "I don't care if I die. I'm a bachelor anyway. I've brought you two trouble." Mu Lin kicked the man in disgust, telling him not to block the way. Then he said to the little bun, "A Qing has always wanted to train you. I think today is a good opportunity. Go, Xiaozi. Call me if you can't do it." The little bun nodded and walked over. The man got up and stopped the little bun. "How can you let a kid go?" "Shut up." Mu Lin raised his hand, and a spiritual barrier pressed the man down. The little bun stepped on the man's butt and went over. The man was in a state of confusion. Before he could get up, he saw the little bun rushing into the zombie crowd. The man covered his eyes and could not bear to watch. However, for a long time, he did not hear any screams or sounds of fear. Then he opened the gap between his fingers, and the man was stunned. That was because he didn't see any bloody scene. For example, little bun was lying on the ground dying. Instead, there were zombies everywhere. Wherever little bun went, no one was spared. The man was stunned. There were still tears in the corners of his eyes. He just stared blankly with his mouth agape. When the little bun was a little tired, Mu Lin raised his hand and swept it away. Those low-level zombies were nothing in Mu Lin's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to train little bun, Mu Lin could have cleared out all the zombies in an instant. After cleaning up, Mu Lin kicked the man's butt and said, "Get up. I have something to ask you." The man was especially confused. He was stunned for a long time before he got up. He was very honest and a little restrained. What's the matter?" Mu Lin said. "Tell me about the current situation. That is, the situation of each base." The man told her everything honestly. He was quite cute, and his words were incoherent. When he talked about something, he would excitedly interject with another thing and his own thoughts. Mu Lin was a little impatient. She scratched her head and said, "Forget it. The situation seems to be quite troublesome. Let's take him back first." The little bun said hurriedly, "Let's go home. I really want to see my sister." Mu Lin nodded. "We'll go home right away." Then she found a vine and tied the man up. She dragged him back. The man was frightened. "Sister, what are you doing?" "Shut up." Mu Lin stuffed a handkerchief into his mouth. Then she took the little bun and dragged the man back. Chapter 7:15. When they got back, she would pass the boy to Xiaoqing and let Xiaoqing understand the situation outside. At noon they stopped for lunch. Mu Lin's cooking was average. After all, when she was with Xiaoqing, it was Xiaoqing who cooked. Later on, when she was separated from Xiaoqing, she rarely cooked for herself. Her cooking was probably at the level of 2 eggs noodles. Little Bun's cooking was better than hers. No matter what, Little Bun was influenced by his genes, so his cooking was at least at the level of tomato and egg noodles. The two of them worked together for lunch. Although it was not a perfect meal, it was still considered a big meal after the apocalypse. Then they started to eat. While eating, they felt that the back of their heads was in a mess. It seemed like something was moving around, making the grass on the ground rustling. Little Bun patted his stomach, but he did not see anything. After eating, the two of them slept. After all, they were children. They were still growing and needed enough sleep. When she got up and was about to leave, she found that the man was lying in the grass, his face full of tears like noodles. He looked very miserable. Mu Lin then remembered that there was another person on the ground. Mu Lin took the handkerchief out of the man's mouth. The man was almost crying. Sister, I haven't eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Mu Lin was a little embarrassed. I'll untie you. Follow me obediently. What I'm going to do will not harm you. As for the food, there's no leftover. I'll give you an apple to eat. I'll make more at night. I really won't run away. The man wiped his face. His face was covered in dust. He looked extremely disheveled. Mu Lin was disgusted. Go wash your face first. The man felt a little wronged, but he still went to the nearby stream to wash his face. After washing his face, he came back obediently. Mu Lin was also testing him. If he ran away while washing his face, she would bring him back and tie him up all the way. She did not care if he would become disabled, because of being tied up for too long. She didn't expect the man to be so honest and come back on his own. Moreover, after the man was washed clean, he looked quite good. He had a baby face, tender as if he was underage, especially a pair of big watery eyes. Lin could not help but ask, "Are you really underage? No wonder she's so good at crying, just like a crybaby." The man's eyes widened. "I'm already 24. 24. Lin sneered and said, "Forget it." Little Bun also jumped up to touch the man's belly. Then, Lin carried him up and allowed Little Bun to touch the man's face. After touching it, he clicked his tongue and said, "Underage." The man really wanted to jump up at that time. Even a child was mocking him. Then Lin slapped him on the back of his head. Lin said lazily, "It's time to go." When they reached Jiang City, it was already night time. Duan Zhuangzhuang kept swallowing his saliva. He said carefully, "Sister Lin, this is a forbidden area for humans. You can't enter as you wish. I wanted to come and take a look, but I didn't dare." Lin carried him and carried Little Bun. Then she said, "Just shut up and follow me." Duan Zhuangzhuang was the man who was kidnapped by Lin. He was quite scared, but he still followed with weak steps. As he walked, he said, "Sister Lin, I really don't want to die. If I die, remember to take my—" "Oh, I don't have any savings." "Shut up." Lin was a little irritable. She regretted bringing such a person back. The three of them kept walking forward, and soon met the first patrol team. The outer layer of the patrol team in Jiang City was always made up of 20 zombies and 3 mutants. This patrol team happened to be led by Gu Panpan. She was too idle in the city, so she always liked to wander outside. She might even meet someone who would fight with her. When Gu Panpan saw Lin, she smiled. "Sister Lin, you're back?" Then she saw Little Bun. "Well, you little brat, you even learned to run away from home? Go back and see if your mother will beat you to death." Little Bun blinked and said pitifully, "Auntie Panpan, you'll definitely plead for me, right?" Gu Panpan snorted and said, "I'll teach you a lesson. Then, you'll know what you can and can't do." Little Bun immediately pounced on Gu Panpan and acted like a spoiled child. Soon Gu Panpan couldn't hold it anymore. She pinched Little Bun's face and laughed with him. Lin coughed and said, "Later, pass the patrol task to someone else. Go back and have a meeting. I'll bring someone back. The situation outside is a little complicated. We need to discuss it." "Okay, Sister Lin. I'll go back after I tell them." She picked up the communicator and said, 54 patrol teams, take note. Start patrolling. Oh, Sister Lin is back. Remember to give the green light all the way." After Lin greeted them, she led the team back. Duan Zhuangzhuang whispered, "Sister Lin, so you're from Jiang City?" He said with envy. "That's great. I heard that people in Jiang City are very protective." Okay. Surprisingly, Lin didn't ask him to shut up. The three of them arrived at the gate of Jiang City at the fastest speed. After they entered Jiang City, they went directly to Xiaoqing's place. Along the way, many people greeted Lin. Duan Zhuangzhuang realized that the people in Jiang City were really different from the people outside. There was no trace of despair or depression on their faces. They were all very happy. That kind of happiness came from the bottom of their hearts. It could be seen that they were really living a good and happy life. Duan Zhuangzhuang was very envious. This kind of place was full of hope and joy. It was like a ray of light at dawn, dispersing the darkness brought by the end of the world. He also wanted to live in such a place. The people here must be very happy every day. After entering the room, Little Bun rushed directly. Xiaoqing was writing and Fu Jingshan was massaging her legs. Ever since she was pregnant, Xiaoqing's legs were a little swollen. The three men had been taking turns to massage her legs, to make her legs more comfortable. After Little Bun rushed over, he carefully placed his ear on Xiaoqing's stomach. Xiaoqing's stomach hadn't bulged yet, but Little Bun was very careful. He even asked, "Mama, does little sister know that I want to kiss her? She's touching my ear." Chapter 7:16. Xiaoqing snorted and gently pinched Little Bun's ear. "You've learned how to avoid problems?" Little Bun coughed and said guiltily. Mama, the weather is so good today. You're getting prettier. Xiaoqing snorted and said, Don't think that I'll let you off just because of this. I won't settle the score with you now, but I won't let it go just like that. Little Bun quickly pretended to be obedient. Mama, you can punish me however you want, but don't be angry. Otherwise, my sister will be unhappy too. Xiaoqing patted Little Bun and said, Thank you for your hard work, Lin. What's this? Mulin told her what happened. Xiaoqing immediately sneered. We've already closed the door. Naturally, we won't see anyone. But this matter needs to be discussed carefully. Bring some people with you. We'll have a small meeting later. Then, Xiaoqing gathered the higher-ups for a meeting. While she was in the meeting, a few people came to the edge of Jiang City. Gu Panpan was handing over her work and preparing to go back for a meeting. Unexpectedly, she bumped into those people. The team leader couldn't solve the problem, so he directly came to look for Gu Panpan. Gu Panpan was already preparing to go back. Hearing that, she went over again. She tidied her sleeves and said impatiently, Didn't you see the words written on it? You're forbidden to enter. Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, you'll be buried. The leader quickly said, We have something to discuss. We want to see the mayor. It's really important. Gu Panpan looked at this person and knew that she couldn't solve the problem. Then she said, Let me ask my family first. Before she finished speaking, a few other people came over. All of them were wearing cloaks that covered their heads and faces. Their faces couldn't be seen clearly. Only the leader had a rough and heroic look. He walked over with a smile. Why? Are you here to ask for help? Didn't you say that those who aren't of our race must have different intentions? Stop talking nonsense. Gu Panpan said impatiently. Didn't you see my contact? All of you are blind. After contacting Xiaoqing, she told her about the situation and said, Sister Qing agreed. Come with me. Patrol teams 1 to 8. Put down your tasks and send these people in. Then a few patrol teams surrounded them from top to bottom, left to right. Although they said they were escorting them, they were actually monitoring them, so that they wouldn't have the chance to run around. Xiaoqing was in the middle of a meeting when they arrived. When there were outsiders around, they naturally couldn't discuss any secrets. Xiaoqing placed her leg on her man's lap and leaned lazily on the chair. 2 families just arrived. Tell me, what are you doing here? There are rules in Jiang City. I made an exception and let you in. Naturally, you have to tell me something. If you want to play with me, don't blame me for being rude. Governor Xiao, we're here today for serious business. We're a family. The leader of the cloaked men chuckled, but he was interrupted halfway through his sentence. Wait, who are you family with? Gu Panpan said impatiently. What kind of world is this? There are people who claim to be relatives. That person was probably used to being superior. Once he was blocked, his face turned ugly. He said stiffly, We're all new humans. Naturally, we're family. New humans were what many zombies who had recovered their memories called themselves. They hunted humans to satisfy their desires. They would call themselves new humans. Chapter 717. Xiaoqing chuckled and said, My family is all from Jiang City. Panpan is right about one thing. Relatives can't be casually claimed. That person's expression was completely unsightly, and he sat there without saying a word. On the other side was naturally the leader of the capital city. Xiaoqing had seen him many times. Although she didn't have a good impression of him, at least she didn't have a bad impression of him. He smiled and said, I did come here to ask for City Lord Xiao's help to deal with these people. If it wasn't for the fact that I have no other choice, I wouldn't want to disturb you. I hope you can forgive me, City Lord. However, it's already the most important moment for the survival of the human race. That's why I shamelessly came here. Xiaoqing was very calm. I've made it very clear before Jiang City sealed off the mountain. We won't participate in any affairs of the outside world. I also hope that you won't disturb us. The reason why I allowed you to enter Jiang City's territory this time is only because I'm in a good mood. I also want to talk things out with you. How you fight is your business. Don't involve Jiang City. The leader of the capital city didn't look good. He really had no other choice, so he came here to look for Xiaoqing. Currently, The two sides were in a confrontation. Mankind was the weaker side. If this continued, mankind would definitely be slowly nibbled away. That was why he shamelessly came here to ask for help. He didn't expect to meet the current enemy of mankind. The cloaked leader calmed himself down and said, Mayor Xiao, this is what I think. We are all Homo evolutus, so it's natural for us to side with each other. I'm not here to ask for your help. I just want to communicate with you. How should I put it? They have always believed that those who are not of our race will have different intentions, so it's natural for us to unite. At the very least, we should be closer to each other. Xiao Qing held her chin and said, Don't try to curry favor with me. I'll make it clear today. Jiang City is neutral. There are ordinary people, superpowered people, and zombies here. We don't flaunt ourselves as new humans or anything. We only have one goal, which is to live peacefully. Now that I've made it clear, everyone can chat with Lele, and then go where you want to go. Isn't that good? Both sides didn't look good. Xiao Qing was a tough nut to crack. As for the people in Capital City, they were afraid that Xiao Qing would be persuaded by the so-called new humans and join them. Then, mankind would really be finished. After all, they did let Jiang City down. It was normal that Xiao Qing didn't like them. As for the new humans, they were afraid that Xiao Qing would help the people in Capital City. If Xiao Qing really got involved, it would be hard to say who would win. It could be said that Xiao Qing was the only unstable factor in this war. No one wanted Xiao Qing to side with the other side. Let's stop here today. Both sides, please leave. Don't come here in the future. Jiang City won't get involved. Xiao Qing was just pregnant. Her birth couldn't be seen, but she was protected by her family. It was as if she was almost 10 months pregnant. I hope that the city lord can reconsider. The people in Capital City were a little more tactful. After saying this, they shut up. The people in cloaks kept talking. The general idea was that they were all new humans. They were the favored children of God. They should be in control of the world. Xiao Qing was helped by them. Even if she didn't help them, she should at least attack the people in Capital City. Otherwise, she would be a traitor. There was a hint of threat in his words. It sounded like if Xiao Qing didn't say anything, Jiang City wouldn't be able to get away with it after they took care of the people in Capital City. After Xiao Qing got pregnant, her temper had been very irritable. However, she was surrounded by her own people. Although she was irritable, she was comforted by the people around her. When she was facing outsiders, her temper swelled. She slammed the table and said, You're like a fly. You didn't understand what I said just now, did you? Now get out of here, or I'll send you out. Since that person was awakened, he had always been the strongest among the zombies. It could be said that he had a high status. He had never been bullied like this. He was originally a rough person. Now he lost his temper. He sneered and said, I want to be friends with you because you're the same kind. Respect is mutual. You've gone too far. If it weren't for the fact that you're the same kind, I wouldn't even set foot in Jiang City. After all, it's easy to tell who's strong and who's weak at a glance. The word strong was still on the tip of his tongue. Xiao Qing slapped him directly and said, You're so long-winded. How dare you threaten people? Who gave you the courage? Her slap was very fast. Before the others could see it clearly, that person had already gone out and was directly pressed against the wall opposite the gate. That person was dumbfounded. He was a level 9 zombie. It could be said that a level 9 zombie was already the top fighting force. At least, there were no level 9 superpowered people at present. He didn't know about Jiang City before. After all, after he was awakened, Jiang City had already disappeared. Only legends were left. Those legends were illusory and sounded very exaggerated. Who would believe that there were several level 9 zombies? Then he was slapped away by Xiao Qing. He didn't even have time to react, let alone fight back. He only felt that for a moment, his body was stiff and couldn't move, as if he was imprisoned by something. He could only watch himself being slapped away. The moment he landed on the ground, he felt as if his internal organs were about to shatter. Of course, he didn't know that at that moment, a small seed had quietly fallen on his crystal nucleus. Xiao Qing wouldn't let things go out of control. Although she said that she wouldn't care about anything, She also wouldn't watch those zombies who had lost their conscience encircle humans and raise them as food. On the one hand, she couldn't stand it. On the other hand, if those new humans had no enemies, they would turn their eyes to Jiang City. It was the same for humans. Sooner or later, humans would attack Jiang City. Xiaoqing hoped that humans would have their own enemies. In this way, they would be busy fighting with their enemies instead of attacking Jiang City. She saw the current situation very clearly. As long as humans accepted those good zombies, their strength would be on par with the so-called new humans. A level 9 zombie wouldn't be able to determine anything. Besides, in the future, there would be more level 9 superpowered people. As long as humans gave up the idea that those who weren't of their kind must have a different heart. No, it should be this narrow prejudice. They wouldn't be so miserable and die out. Chapter 7:18. After slapping one of them away, Xiaoqing said to the other one, I think I have made myself clear. Please go back. Jiangqing City will not get involved, now and in the future. If you need me to send you out, just pretend that I didn't say anything. The leader of the capital city was smart enough to take his men away. Although this trip didn't go as smoothly as they expected, at least they confirmed that Xiaoqing was neutral. It could only be said that it was their fault in the past. They couldn't blame Xiaoqing for not getting involved now. It was indeed narrow-minded to say that those who weren't of the same race would have different intentions. After they left, Xiaoqing continued the meeting with her friends. After playing for a while, Xiaoqing said to Duan Zhangzhuang, If what you said is true and your performance is good, I can let you stay in Jiangqing City temporarily. After observing you, I will decide if you can become a member of Jiangqing City. Duan Zhangzhuang was very excited. Thank you, Castellan. Xiaoqing's display of her skills had shocked the people on both sides. The new humans no longer dared to be arrogant. They were much more obedient, and obediently avoided Jiangqing. The people in the capital city also thought it through. In the face of life and death, they still cared about those who weren't of the same race would have different intentions. Wasn't that courting death? Moreover, zombies were also transformed from humans. What was the biggest difference between humans and animals? It was just that humans had wisdom and emotions. Zombies who had recovered their memories were still human. However, some ideas couldn't be changed easily. Although they were still slowly changing their views and accepting those good zombies, there was still a gap between humans and zombies. After the war between the two sides slowly entered a stalemate, Xiaoqing was about to give birth. After being pregnant for 9 months, before the expected date of delivery, she started to have labor pains. The doctors who were already prepared rushed in. Xiaoqing's childbirth was really different from other women's. The 4 men squatted at the door, 3 big and 1 small. They were all frightened, but there was no sound coming from inside. It wasn't as heart-wrenching as in the movies and TV series, nor was it as difficult as they had seen before. About an hour later, the doctor walked out with a dull face and said, She's given birth. Both mother and daughter are safe. The 3 men and the little bun quickly went in. Xiaoqing carried her newborn daughter. She didn't look weak at all. There was no smell of blood in the air. It didn't look like a delivery room at all. However, the 3 men were about to collapse, especially Fu Jingxin. He said directly, This one is enough. We have a son and a daughter. What else do we lack? I'm not giving birth anymore. Xiaoqing nodded. She didn't want to have too many children. 2 was enough. The little bun even stood on tiptoe and muttered, Mama, let me see my sister. Then a group of people came over to look at the baby. The newborn baby's skin was red and a little wrinkled. It didn't look good at all, but everyone praised it from the bottom of their hearts, especially the 3 silly fathers. Daddy number 1 Fu Jingxin. Aya, our daughter's mouth is like mine. Daddy number 2 Yan Hanqing. Our daughter's nose is like mine. It's tall and straight. Daddy number 3 Yan Qiyue. Her eyes are exactly the same as mine. Xiaoqing, haha. It's so wrinkled. How can you tell? No matter what, nothing could stop the 3 silly fathers from loving their daughters. They hugged each other, and the way they carried the child was very standard. It looked like they had learned it in advance, but they didn't have any experience and were a little stiff. Chapter 719. After all, a newborn's body was too soft. They were all careless and were afraid of hurting their daughter. It was Mu Lin who broke the strange silence. Have you given your daughter a name yet? Xiao Qing teased the little bun and said. The three of them insisted, so I decided to call her Little Liao. Her full name is Xiao Xiao. Mu Lin was speechless. The two of them added together would be Whistle. She couldn't bear to look and covered her eyes. Xiao Qing was really bad at naming. What was more frightening was that the three silly fathers were actually very supportive. Daddy number 1 Fu Jingxian. This name is really cute. Daddy number 2 Yan Hanqing. It's very nice and suitable for girls. Daddy number 3 Yan Qiyue. It's so deep and meaningful. Mulin, ba shameless. When Xiao Xiao was born, she became the little princess of Jiang City. There was also Xiao Bai who liked her very much. Xiao Bai completely treated Xiao Xiao as his younger sister. He always hung the little bun on his left leaf and supported Xiao Xiao on his right leaf, just like a little nanny. However, he was very happy, so Xiao Qing didn't stop him. When the war officially ended, it was the 10th year of the apocalypse. Humans called this year the New Era. It was also the time when the dawn arrived. More and more zombies woke up. After all, there were more good people than bad people. Humans completely abandoned their prejudice and joined forces with the zombies to defeat the so-called new humans. Xiao Qing was worried that the level 9 leader would run away, so she sent a few of her friends to help. After getting rid of this group of people, at least the country was peaceful. The entire country was in a state of many things waiting to be done. Coincidentally, at this time, Yi developed a kind of medicine. This medicine was like the fertilizer in his previous life. When it was sprinkled into the ground during planting, no matter what kind of soil it was, it could grow food. The apocalypse was scary, but it would eventually be conquered by humans. The apocalypse wasn't good either, but it taught everyone a lesson. When you destroy the environment and pollute nature, you are actually cutting off your own escape route. Naturally, there would be another way to take revenge on everyone. For example, the apocalypse. The apocalypse was a result of nature's own adjustment. In order to not be destroyed, it changed the environment, just like the Ice Age. Now, even a little child knew that they couldn't destroy the environment, because if they did, it would be the end of the world. Even though they had entered a peaceful era, Jiang City's status remained the same. However, as humans abandoned their prejudices and Xiao Qing forgot about hatred, Jiang City was no longer isolated from the rest of the world. They interacted with the outside world, and there would also be people who went out to train. However, they still maintained the tradition of not allowing people to enter Jiang City easily. However, every once in a while, Xiao Qing would allow the survivors to organize a group of people to visit Jiang City. It was considered a friendly exchange. Shiroyuki Abe had already brought her people back, but one person stayed behind. It was full moon of white water. This guy was so thick-skinned that he couldn't be chased away. He was willing to pay a high price to stay in Rivertown. Xiao Qing couldn't just throw him out because he owed her a favor. Don't just stand there. What time is it now? Go call Big Baby and Little Baby. We're going to the wedding. Xiao Qing tidied up the creases on her clothes and walked down. She happened to see Full Moon of White Water holding his chin in a daze. Ah! Full Moon of White Water jumped up and said, I'll go now. There were two couples today. First Mu Lin and Duan Zhangzhuang, who liked each other. Then, Xiao Bai and Xiao Tong, who were together for some reason. Xiao Qing encouraged Xiao Bai to confess. She even secretly eavesdropped on them. Xiao Bai wasn't a talkative person. He blushed and mustered up his courage to say to Xiao Tong, I'm incomplete. It's strange, but my heart is complete. It belongs to you. I like you. Can you marry me? Xiao Tong liked Xiao Bai too, but she was too embarrassed to confess. After all, she was a girl. Xiao Tong replied, I was deaf and you were mute. You didn't despise me, so why would I despise you? Also, you didn't find it strange at all. I'm willing to marry you. As for Mu Lin and Duan Zhangzhuang, Xiao Qing could only say that Duan Zhangzhuang was a masochist. After being bullied, she fell in love with them. The two couples who were going to be married today were very important to her. Xiao Qing naturally had to be solemn. Xiaozi and Xiao Xiao were flower boys today. One looked like a little gentleman, while the other looked like a little princess. After the apocalypse, weddings weren't as complicated as before. It was just a simple ceremony followed by a huge banquet. Everyone in Jiang City could come and participate. It was like a carnival. When Xiao Qing looked at the two newlyweds, her heart was filled with emotions. No matter how unfair the heavens were to her in the past, she was now very grateful to the heavens, because whether it was her or the people she cared about, they had all obtained their own happiness. Xiao Tong insisted that she sit in the seat of the elders. They had a Chinese ceremony where they bowed to heaven and earth before bowing to the elders. When Xiao Tong knelt down and kowtowed, her eyes and Xiao Tong's eyes were filled with tears, especially Xiao Tong. It could be said that Xiao Tong's life was given by Xiao Qing. Now everything she had was given by Xiao Qing. Rather than saying that they were sisters, their relationship was more like that of a mother and daughter. Xiao Qing felt a little sad to send her daughter to a wedding, even if the other party was her own people. But she still smiled. After the two couples finished the ceremony, it would be after the apocalypse, and no woman would insist on waiting in the bridal chamber. The two couples also joined in the carnival. Xiao Qing didn't drink. She just held the tea that the two couples gave her. She was very carefree. In the end, other than those who had a mission and had to patrol, most of the people were drunk. Xiao Qing quietly went to Gu Ponpon's side and whispered, "You still haven't forgiven him?" Gu Ponpon's face was red, but her eyes were clear. "Sis, some things can't be solved just by forgiving. I used to abuse him to vent the pain in my heart, but he also used abuse to vent his guilt. It's good that we are like this. At least he can't leave me anymore, and I have complete control over him." Yi Wuzhua accompanied her by her side. His eyes were filled with gentleness and perhaps guilt. Xiao Qing thought, "Everyone has their own way of life. You are not a fish. How can you know the happiness of a fish? Actually, everyone is very good, isn't it?" Xiao Qing turned her head. 3 men were carrying 2 children and waving at her. She didn't know if it was because she drank, but her eyes were a little moist. The bitterness of this half of her life was finally over. All that was left was happiness. Yendi that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.